You're listening to Top Shelf Creator. On today's episode, I talked with Wesley Ryan, who is an international icon and bi-coastal baddie. Wes grew up in the entertainment industry and has been working professionally in the arts for the last 20 years. After touring the world with the musical Hamilton for 6 years, they decided to write a TV show about their real life in the industry, not the curated theater magic and social media highlights, but the raw, unfiltered human cost of bringing Broadway magic to theaters across the globe. And let me tell you, this is a little bit longer of an episode, so you might want to have it in two sittings. However, we talked through a lot of really amazing things that creators need to be taking into consideration. The invisible strings that tie Wes and I together that we didn't even know existed until we started having a conversation right before we started recording. And a lot of amazing aspects of what it looks like to be in this industry and be in this industry long term. So let's get started. Get ready to discover the best way to create a thriving business online from other creators and entrepreneurs just like you, who are making a full-time living doing what they love. I'm Kabrina Ashley, and as a former Disney trainer and consultant, I'm here to guide you in telling the right stories so you can be seen and heard by your ideal clients. Each week, join me in conversations with industry leaders as we unveil the keys to crafting a sustainable business that helps you more than survive, but thrive. This is the first creator podcast to give you clarity, help you position yourself in the market, and harness your influence to scale your community. Welcome to the Top Shelf Creator Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Top Shelf Creator Podcast. I am with my friend Wes Ryan, and we actually met on the Tiki Talkies. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is so cool. Let me go ahead and message him. And then as I've gotten to know Wes, I have learned so many cool things. And I was just telling him, this is our first like real conversation outside of email or TikToking back and forth. And I was like, I know you. You're like one of my best friends already. And we have some cool invisible strings that we're going to talk about, his show that he is creating, and all of these amazing things that we are going to be able to do together. And so, Wes, I would love for you to tell us how you got here, a little bit about places, please, and some of the directions that you want to go. And then we'll just kind of take our fun coffee chat conversation from there.
Yes, I love it. First of all, thanks for having me. It is so great to connect with you. We're not person to person, but face to face, if you will, after so much internet back and forthing. It's one of the things that I love about the internet is the community that you can find. Yes, it can be very divisive. Yes, it can be a cesspool for whatever. But I say all the time, the internet has been very kind to me and has brought so many wonderful people into my life. So I'm so glad that we get to like sit down and do this finally.
Yeah.
A little bit about me. I grew up in Southern California. Did my first musical theater show when I was about 3 years old through the Cultural Arts Center here where I live. At 8 years old, my aunt started her own youth theater company. And so I grew up doing 3 shows a year. We would do one in the spring, one in the summer, and one in the winter. And that was kind of like my musical theater education. I did not go to school for this. I did not want to pursue this as a career. I wanted to be a surgeon. I chose my high school because of their graduation percentage to 4-year medical universities. A lot of my graduating class are in the medical field of some kind, nursing, psychology, doctors, a lot of them. And my sophomore year of high school, I lost my father at the start of the year while I was auditioning for this new musical that was coming out that they were doing the world premiere of in LA. That musical is called 13, the musical. You will hear me reference that a couple more times just because it really changed the trajectory of who I was. Not just the show, but at the time of my life that it came about, having just lost my father so young, he was only 48 when he passed away, having lost him so suddenly as well, to have this positive, life-changing new reality that I could step into while navigating this grief and this loss, I really say that it saved my life. It gave me something to focus on that wasn't the inner emotional turmoil, and I could kind of be whoever I wanted to be. I had to leave high school to go do that show because we were tutored on set. So I left kind of anything that would have kept me tied to that former hurt person and got to step in. Like, I didn't have to tell anybody at rehearsals what had been going on in my personal life if I didn't want to. Obviously, people found out as the show progressed, and including Jason Robert Brown, Tony Award winner, composed that show, and he had just lost his father earlier that year as well. So he wrote all of us opening night notes on sheet music, and he chose different songs for each person and like hand wrote the notes on the page, but then like wrote our personal notes in the like lyric line. And I still, it's framed in my apartment in New York because it was so meaningful to me just to know that like he saw all that was going on in my life and how I was handling it so young, and like to bolster and uplift that. I'm very grateful for that. But fun fact about 13 the musical, Ariana Grande went on to do 13 the musical on Broadway. So that is my Ariana Grande, my first Ariana Grande connection that I'm sure I will make because I'm obsessed with her. No one's allowed to talk about negatively about my Ariana Grande, okay? But that was 15. Went back to high school to like graduate with my class because it was too late for me to transfer to an arts program of any kind. My junior and senior year, they weren't accepting transfers. So I was like, let me just graduate with my class, do that. I started going to a community college in the area because I wasn't quite sure. I knew that I didn't want to go to school for medical anything, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to pursue the arts. I didn't necessarily want to go to an arts university again. I kind of missed that application process. So I was a dance major, English minor, and got through my freshman year of that college, the associate's program. Second semester of, or second year, my sophomore year, got through the first semester. And at the start of the new year, which would have been the second half of my sophomore year, which things tend to happen in my sophomore year of life, just in general. I love the like little patterns of life purpose. I was auditioning for a theater company in southern Utah. It's this gorgeous outdoor amphitheater called Tuacahn, 1,000 seats. The backdrop of this venue is the Red Rock Canyons. It's all outdoors, so you have to wait till the sun goes down. So your show times change throughout the contract. And so I was auditioning for that, and the choreographer of that season at my callback. So my audition was Friday, my callback was Saturday. At my callback, the choreographer came up to me and pulled me aside and was like, "So I own my own dance company in Utah. I had a dancer who has to fly home to Puerto Rico to take care of his sick mother. We need a replacement. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Me? Like, who am I? Like, what do you mean? Like, yes." Is the short answer. I was about 19 years old. And he's like, "The thing is, our season starts on Monday, so you'd have to move to Utah tomorrow." And I was like, and he's like, "I'll call your parents tonight and like let them know that I'm not just some crazy person that's trying to like pick you up and move you to somewhere else in the country." But so I got to the car and called my mom, and she was like, "How did it go? Like, did you book it?" And I was like, no, I don't know, but I booked something else." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "I'm moving to Utah tomorrow." And she's like, "What?" So a lot of my life has been, one of my mottos, especially in New York, is hesitate and you die. Because you're crossing the street and you think for a second, like, am I going to make it before that car comes? Now you've hesitated. Now that car has made it further. And like, if you try to go now, you're going to get hit. So when you have the thought, jump and go. And I think a lot of that comes from this like offer in the room type trajectory that my life has been. If you look at my career on paper, it is not the story of most. And I have booked a lot of work in the room after an initial audition, which I wish at the time I had taken as a reflection of my talent, ability, and worth, instead of me feeling like, "Ooh, I tricked them into thinking that I was good enough." You know, my like value. I wish it had been. I wish that I'd been able to. I just want to hug that little kid and tell them that they're so like the rooms that we're in are a reflection of us. The tables that we're sitting, if I'm looking around the table and going, "Wow, this is a table of like massive creators in the entertainment industry," that's a reflection of my ability and my worth, not my luck that I got into that room. I'm the firmest believer that we are always exactly where we're supposed to be when we're there. And I feel like that lesson has come from a lot of these, in hindsight's 2020,
Mhm.
and going, "Oh, you booked that in the room. You were sitting at this table. You were working with Jason Robert Brown. You were doing all these things. And that is a reflection of your talent, your ability, your worth." Not that not getting the jobs, I say this to young people that I mentor and coach and do master classes with, but the no's are also not reflections of your talent, your ability, and your worth. There are a million and one reasons why we don't get the thing, get the job, the whatever. So anyway, that was 19. Did the dance company. We went on tour in Germany, ended up booking the theater company in Tuacahn. The following year, I started working at Disney in Anaheim. That led me to auditioning for Disney in Hong Kong. And then I worked in Disney in Hong Kong on and off for 12 years, doing their Lion King show. I was Simba in their Lion King show out there, repping the Disney merch.
Love it.
I'm not a Disney adult, but I love Disney. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that there's anything wrong with Disney adults. We love them. A lot of my following are Disney adults, and I do some Disney content every now and again. But I think it's just a place for so much community, and there's something to be said for the childlike wonder of stepping back into the magic, if you will, and remembering what it was like to just play. We don't play
Yeah.
nearly enough as adults, and I think that the Disney is one place where we get to just play and imagination gets to run wild.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that
thankful
was
that
the point of it. Like, that's why
yeah,
Walt created Disneyland because he wanted a place for adults to be able to play with their kids because it didn't exist before Disney. We take
right,
it for granted because there's lots of places like that now. But there wasn't Chuck E. Cheese and Disneyland and all these different things to go do with your family when he was sitting at that carousel with his girls.
right.
He was like, how cool would it be for me to not have to sit back here, that I could be involved in this? And I think that
Yes.
there's lots of things we could get into with the Disney adult thing, and I feel like we need to just do a whole 'nother episode on Disney adults because we've
And we
both
should.
been there. But
One of our invisible strings.
yes, 100%. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but I love this idea of this play piece because you've said a couple of really magnificent things so far. One is that the people that you are in that room with is a reflection of who you are, because I think that especially creators, authors, speakers, talent, dancers, all of that group of people, we all see ourselves as different in some ways, but there's so much of this that is the same. And
Mm,
so many times that we go, am I worthy of this? Somebody told me no. So I'm not worthy of this. And I think it stops so many people from moving to the next thing, from being the person that they're meant to be, from going to their calling. And then they look back and they go, well, shit, if I would have done this one thing, if I would have made this step. And the regrets that I hear from people, especially working with corporate, is I wish that I would have done that. And I can't
mm,
tell you how many people I work with that are second career. They're like, I wanted to be fill in the blank when I was a kid. And now I finally have the money, the resources, the blah, 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 because they were waiting for somebody to give them permission. And so I think that it's so valuable that you're like, I just want to play. I just want to be out here. I want to be doing the thing because all the studies show that play is actually what makes us do the things that we're supposed to do.
yeah,
And we do it more efficiently because our
yes.
brain's like, oh, well, this is not scary. We're just doing something that's fun. And so I think that that's such a valuable lesson that you're bringing up for people.
It's one thing that I wish, like I said, that I wish that I had applied sooner. I was a very shy child growing up, and I still, on the inside, am a very, I wouldn't say very, but I'm a shy adult. You would never know it because my mom had this conversation with me. I don't even remember how old I was. Late teens. She still is a little bit surprised that that I do this for a living, this public facing performance thing because I was the kid that was so nervous about not performing to the best of my ability that I would make myself sick with anxiety and worry, and then I wouldn't perform to the best of my ability. Self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We as human beings love a little bit of self-sabotage because it gives us the illusion of control. It makes us feel like, see, I knew that was gonna happen when in reality, like, we caused it. But you have to learn how to it's 11:11 here, which I love. Little numerology for us. How to get past that. I think actually going back to the nose not being a reflection of us, Disney actually taught me that. So I opened the Red Car Newsboys show in Disney's California Adventure, and while doing that show, one of my dear friends was my stage manager one day, and the director of Newsies the musical on Broadway came to see like what we had been working on as the newsboys of you know Anaheim. And I had gone in for Newsies, been called in for Newsies, like, I think 5 times at that point, and made it down to the final 2, final 3, each of these auditions, and then it was a no. Not even a no, you just don't hear anything. That's also the worst part of the industry, which I'm gonna talk about one of the ways that I want to change things down the line. But he came to see the show, and my friend, the stage manager, was in charge of taking him around the park that day. And he recognized me from the auditions. And he was like, I know that kid from somewhere. Like, I don't know how I know them. Like, what is. And my friend was like, well, they've actually auditioned for you a number of times. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's it. We kept calling them in for Newsies, but they're too tall. And I was like, it was an eye opening moment for me. And I was probably maybe 22, 23 at that point. Because it is so easy to take the no's and the rejections as a reflection of us. But me being too tall is something I cannot change. It is not because I'm not talented enough. It is not because I'm not good enough. It's not because I'm not worthy enough. It's because I'm too tall to fit whatever track they needed me for. And all of those Newsies were short. Most of those Newsies, I should say, were shorter men, 5'6" to 5'8", 5'9". I'm 6'1". It was never gonna be my also, don't call me in. My height's not gonna change, but that's beside the point. But, like, it gave me a moment of going, "Oh, there are a million and one reasons that have nothing to do with my personhood, my talent, my ability, my
Mhm.
work value for why
Yeah.
these are no's." I firmly believe that our no's, our rejections, our setbacks, the negative things that happen to us, setbacks are redirections, and
Mhm.
redirections are protection to get us back in line with our calling, our purpose. Like if we start to get off track, not that something bad has to happen to course correct, but these things, the chaos tends to ensue when we're not walking and standing in alignment and purpose, right? And so I think back to a lot of the times in my life where relationships I've gotten in chaos and it hasn't occurred whether because of me, to me, or with me. And it can oftentimes be stripped back to lack of patience on my part, rushing into a situation where I felt like I wanted control, whether that be, "Ooh, I'm running out of money, so let me run back to a thing that's gonna give me immediate gratification of that money instead of waiting patiently for the blessing, the outcome that would have been coming if I had just been able to sit in my discomfort a little bit," which is so hard to do. But it is so valuable. If there's one thing I talk about a lot in my TikToking, Instagramming, life in general, no matter who I'm talking to, it's learning to face the discomfort and the setback with the mindset of everything is always working out for my ultimate good, even the bad. Because even the bad, like I think not that my dad, although I did carry this for a little while, but my dad didn't die so that I could book 13. But as a 15-year-old child, you kind of start to learn. Like, I feel like a lot of my life, I waited for the rug to be pulled out from under me because bad had to occur for good to occur. I had to sacrifice and lose something to get something good. When in reality, it's like the loss that I experienced at that point, it allowed me to let go of the former part of my life to step fully into this new one. I may not have been able to do that without not again, I don't wanna say that it happened because of but, like, if I hadn't learned that lesson or dealt with that grief, I may not have been able to put both feet in the new version of me, right? And if we're trying to have one foot in each world, like, we don't grow that way. The thing is that's holding us back. It doesn't
Well,
make it feel
and
good.
with the numerology of 13, a lot of that, like, people will go, "Well, it's a bad thing. It's a bad sign, blah, 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 blah." But when I was reading into it, when you really read what 13 stands for, it's all about new beginnings.
Mm,
And so it's really an interesting idea that that was the catalyst for you too. And so thinking about what are the things that we tend to, as humans, we're looking for meaning. So we're going to go, oh, this is happening because of this. And I think you're right. There are so many people that wait until something bad happens. They lose the job, they lose a relationship, they have something that goes away. And then they're like, oh, now I'll start the business. Now I'll start
mm,
working on myself. Now I'll do these things because people need that slap in the face. One of my mentors always says, the universe is going to throw a pebble at you. And then if you don't listen, it's going to throw a bigger rock at you. And then eventually it's going to throw a boulder at you. And most people wait for the boulder to be thrown at them before they make changes
mm,
because they don't know how to just be like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. I'm going to do something about it now versus when things are really bad and I don't have any choice but to make a change. Because what I think happens is that people don't want to make a choice at the end of the day. They're waiting for the universe, God, whatever you call it, to make the choice for them.
and to them, yeah.
And then it's life's happening to you.
Yes,
And too
yes.
many
Oh my god.
people do that because they wanna be the victim. They don't wanna be the main character. They just wanna be like, "Oh, poor me."
Yeah, the comfort of our chaos is more familiar than the discomfort of the unknown. And so we'd
Yeah.
rather sit in what we do know, even if what's on the other side of that door is the greatest thing to ever happen to us. We're not willing to risk the discomfort of getting there. We'd rather sit in the comfort of what we already know, even if that's not serving us. So then when that boulder comes, now it's like, see, my life sucks. And like,
Mhm.
and that's coming from a place of a person that like used to feel that way about a lot of things. We lost a number of family members over the course of my young life. And so I have a very interesting and maybe all too comfortable relationship with death, but it's also taught me about the finiteness of life. And I lost my dad. He was only 48 years old. I'm closer to that than I am the age that I lost him, right? And so I don't want to keep waiting for life to happen to me, like you said. I want to grab life by the horns and ride the bucking bull. Like that, I would rather do that and be in control of that sector of my life of going like, yes, I did jump in with both feet into the chaos of the unknown rather than just like letting the bull ram me and flip me through the air and landing on my back.
Things I always ask people, I'm like, and that I tell my boyfriend is, I don't want to wake up when I'm 80 or 90 years old and go, fuck, I wish I would have done that. I wish
Mm,
I would have taken the chance, because the worst thing that people can say to you is no. The worst thing that they can be like, hey, this is what's happening to you. This is the thing that is going on. And I get that no. And so, okay, cool. I got the no. And now I can move forward and find the yes. And so I had a sticky note on my computer for the longest time that said, "Go find the no's," because it
mm,
became, I had to make it a game in my brain,
yeah,
because having been owning a marketing agency and stuff, I had clients who would be like, "I can't send the email. I can't do this. I can't post on social media." And I'm like, "Nobody's gonna know you. How am I supposed to know that you exist if you're not showing up?" It's like those things at the end caps that are on sale that you're like, "Oh my god, this is the coolest product I've ever found," but it was hiding and I had to go search for it. So some people
yeah,
will find you that way. But if you're not like, "Hey, here I am." This is why stupid people who don't overthink things don't have imposter syndrome, because they're
right.
not overthinking the fact of, "Oh, what if somebody says no?" And that's why you can look at people and go, "How come that MF over there is doing all the things that I want to be doing and I'm not as far as I should be? I've got more education, I'm smarter than them, I've got more experience, I've done these things." And it's because the smart people have the curse of being smart. You
Yes.
overthink it, and
We
then
don't
all of
have
a sudden you're not where you wanna go.
Yeah, yeah. I've like that's we'll get into a little bit more of this as we get to like the current point of my life, but like their delusion of grandeur is the thing that gets them further. Their
Yep.
audacity to go do something is the thing that gets them into it. And those of us that are high performing or overqualified, we go, okay, well, I mean, it could be mine, it could be theirs. Like we start doing this like leveling thing and like the imposter syndrome of it all instead of being like, babe, I got this in the bag. And when you get into that frame of mind, like so much more is drawn into your existence, your sphere, because A, God, the universe source, recognizes that you see the ability, the worth, the value, and it's like, okay, you're ready for more.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I also think too in my life, like, it's not that the blessings didn't arrive, I didn't hold them, mostly because of my own internal, like, oh, I don't, this isn't mine, like, or we're being gentle with the thing. It's like, no, if I'm one of those people who, if I go grocery shopping, I'm gonna try to grab every single bag in one go, so I don't have to go back to the car. I just take 2 trips, bro. It really is not that serious. But like, I'm like every single thing, water jugs balancing on my head, like the
Mhm.
carrying it all. Oh, why can't I apply that same mentality to like the things that I actually want for my life, the blessings that I want to be brought into me? Just to close out the who I am, how I got here. So after all of this Disney stuff, I moved to New York finally. I finally believed that I was worthy enough to move to New York. It took me a long time to move there because I didn't think that I was talented enough, capable, worthy. And I worried that if I moved to New York and didn't book a Broadway show or didn't succeed, that not only would I be letting myself down, I would let everybody down, whoever told me I was going to amount to something. And so the fear of that kept me from doing it. It took me on many wonderful adventures. And like I said, Hong Kong, I worked on cruise ships. I did regional gigs all over the country, traveled the world. That was the other thing too, is I knew that once I moved to New York, it was going to be home. I laugh at that now because I'm completely bi-coastal and live between LA and New York. So it is home. I own an apartment there, but like also I'm in LA oftentimes. But after my last contract in Hong Kong in 2018, I was like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm gonna live my delusion. That's really where it started. And I'm going to dive in with both feet. I made my word consistency. I was going to show up consistently in everything I did. I was going to be auditioning scares me. I think it is the most vulnerable. People ask all the time, like, why is it so hard? You are giving the most vulnerable parts of you to complete strangers in a room, and they decide whether or not you get the opportunity to do the thing that you love. It is so out of your control. Even if you do the best, you still may not get the job. And so there's so much giving of self, so much psyche and psyching yourself up from be like, okay, I got this. I may not be feeling the best vocally today, but like I'm gonna go in there and give what I got. You sometimes they give you material couple days before you have to be in that room and have to give them 16 pages of dialogue and 4 songs. And you're like grappling with this internal, anxiety and back and forth. And then you walk in that room, you've got 15 minutes to do it all, and then that's it. and then you let it go in the hopes that someone comes back and says yes, because you don't get a no. You just don't hear about it, and then you see the cast list go out and you're not on it, and you're like, "Well, didn't book that one," and on we go. I had a friend tell me that auditioning is the job as a performer. The contract is the payoff, that's the reward. But like our actual job is to be in every single room and giving ourselves one, you never know who's on the other side of that table that's gonna work with you at some other point in your career. That's why I always tell everybody, no matter where you are, and not out of a this is not a ladder climbing thing. This is just a goodness of personhood, but be kind because you never know what part of your reputation is gonna precede you for any job that you do after this. And if you were somebody who talked back, was a diva, that reputation is gonna precede you on future contracts. But if I want people to say, no matter what job I did, like, "Oh, Wesley was a joy to work with." They came in
Mhm.
every day with a smile on their face, even on the bad days. Not that like not as a mask to cover up the bad. I'm very honest and transparent, especially on my social media about that. But came in with kindness, treated everyone with respect, was loving first. I want that to be the descriptors when I walk into these rooms. So made the word consistency, moved to New York in 2019, and then booked every job that I needed to within the first 3 months of living there. I booked West Side
Love that.
Story in Chicago. I booked a production of In the Heights, which was my springboard because like I said, in the first 3 months, I booked everything. I didn't know it. I was in Hamilton auditions for about 6 weeks straight, and talk about grueling. You come in, you learn a combo, they make cuts, you dance again, or they add on to it. Then they make cuts and people stay and sing. Then you don't hear anything until like Thursday, and they're like, come back in on Tuesday the next week, and they review the choreography they already taught you. They make cuts, they teach you new choreography, they make cuts, you stay and sing. You come back in the next week, you do both of those combos, they add on another combo, then you sing again. It was just like this nonstop revolving door. And it was down to me after 6 weeks, me and two other guys. And I was like, oh, like this could be mine.
Yeah.
I feel like this is my shot, pun intended, for the
Mhm.
Hamilton there. And then I didn't get it. I didn't hear anything. I heard nothing back. Like even then, down to the final three, you can send, even if it's a stock email. This is one of the things I want to change about the internet. Even if it's a stock email, have AI send it. You don't have to put my name in it. Casting went in a different direction. Thank you for your time. That's it. Now I won't hold on to whether or not I need to do I not take other work because this is the job I'd prefer. But that was like March of 2019. Like I said, I booked West Side Story, I booked In the Heights. I moved back to New York in September and was like, okay, I'm ready to do what I need to do. I'm gonna be a cater waiter and like do the thing where I grind in New York City. I had that job for 2 weeks before my agent called me and was like, you booked the tour. I didn't go back in. It was all done in that room in March. And I had no idea. I felt it a little bit, you know what I mean? I felt like I was proud of what I did. That was also a turning point for me, is that I left the room every single time going like, I'm proud of what I gave in there. And that wasn't always, even if I did a great audition, I was still like, oh, like I could have done better. I was a little pitchy or like whatever, you know? Booked the first national tour in October, well, September 2019, joined in October. We obviously shut down for the pandemic in March. And then I had 17 months to really reflect on who I am as a person, as a performer. I like to say you can tell who did the work during that period and who like internal work and who did not, because we came back to tour August 2021. And I mean, as so many of us are still to this day, changed people from that experience, right? This collective global trauma that we all lived through. I wasn't willing to sacrifice parts of me anymore because for the first time in my life, I found parts of me because all we could do was sit there. I lived in New York by myself. Like I had nothing but reflective time. And so I did a lot of thinking about who I am, what I want, who I want to be, and how I want to proceed. And so we got back into this industry that takes and takes and takes with little care or regard. I talk a lot about what I feel are universal experiences. They just happen to be up against the backdrop of musical theater or entertainment because that's the industry I live in. But really, you could take any of these stories and slap it in whatever industry you work in, and it's the same deal. The people at the top don't know what it takes for the people at the bottom to do their jobs, and they require so much excellence of us at the bottom while mediocrity thrives at the top. That's part of the like, the underqualified people who get the jobs that but we're sitting over here sitting thinking like, oh, that could never be me. Meanwhile, they're like, yeah, I got this in the bag. And then they get the
Mhm.
job because of their delusion. There's something to be said for that, which we're going to get into my life motto these days. But yeah, I really had this the next year, August 2021 to when I left tour in 2022, was a lot of grappling with how much I was sacrificing for this industry that I wasn't even sure I wanted to be a part of anymore. When I joined the tour, I was so overwhelmed and stressed with the pressures of learning the show. I was the only one coming in at the time to learn like as a replacement. And so I was rehearsing by myself offsite. My hair fell out. I was so overwhelmed, so exhausted, while everybody on the outside was praising me and cheering me on for booking this thing and like pinnacle of my career. And I'm like, this is miserable. I'm not enjoying this. I was so terribly unhappy and lonely. You know, like we leave our in the entertainment industry, we leave our families, our friends, our comfort zones to go immerse ourselves in this thing that we love and that we're so passionate about, but we're doing it on our own. We lose that community and connection. Like, yes, we find that there are pockets of it within the people that we work with, but especially when you're traveling a show, like at the end of the day, or first, not even at the end of the day, first and foremost, they're your colleagues.
Yeah.
It's one of the only industries where the expectation is that your colleagues become your support system. We live in the same hotels, we work in the same building, we go to the same bars after work. We're not even talking about the incestuousness of hooking up with people you work with, which is a no-go for me because it ends in disaster every single time because I watch it happen to not just me, but to everybody. When relationships fail while you work together, you still have to be on stage and work together 8 shows a week, 6 days a week. Our only day off is Monday. And so now everyone that I work with, they're my colleagues. Would we get along if we met in New York? Some of them, no,
Mhm.
absolutely not. But every day, 6 days, we don't even get the luxury of a 2-day weekend. You're in this world with these people that become your everything. Eat, sleep, breathe, hook up with, work with, live with. Like it is so unhealthy. But like that's the industry. And so we're taught that like that's what it is. This is what you signed up for, you know? So my
Well, and
experience with
I
Hamilton.
see this yeah, I see this even in the corporate world, so I love that you were saying it doesn't matter what you're doing. All of these things are reflective of just the human condition, and I think that that's what makes your story so unique and so interesting for the show that you're writing, is because of the fact that we are all going I'm, like, going, "Oh, yep, my corporate people say the same thing. Oh, yeah, I've had my high performers, they say the same thing, and I've had creators, I've had entrepreneurs, and they're all repeating these same ideas of, you know, this is just the industry. This is just what it's supposed to be. This is what I was told it was going to be like. And thus I have fit myself into this specific piece. And then you have these awakenings, like for many of us, 2020 was the irony that hindsight is 2020 and 2020 was everybody's hindsight,
I
right?
think about it every day. I'm not even
It's
exaggerating.
crazy.
Every single day I go, oh, oh.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
really we've been saying it for years, and then it really was 2020 was everybody well, not even and that's the problem, it wasn't everybody. Some people went right back into the patterns of behavior, whether what of that exactly what we're talking about. A lot of people in whatever industry goes, they also go, "Well, this is what I was given, so that's what I'm giving back." And I'm like, "Oh, no." See, I'm like, "This is what I was given. Here's what I want to, like, fix and change and make better. I wanna leave any room that I'm in, any person that I'm with, any space that I inhabit better than I left it." No matter especially if I was given the short end of the stick, you know what I mean? Like, to me, I feel like that's my obligation to this world is to see what I've been given, what I've been handed as an opportunity for better. I think a lot of times we can learn a lot more in the negative than the positive. If everything's a triumph, don't learn the same way that we do in a setback, in a loss, in a negative quote unquote situation. I learned a lot about how not to run a company by the companies I've worked for, and that includes Disney, that includes the Broadway industry, you know? Like, there is a lot to be said for especially as a person on the ground doing the heavy lifting and getting paid the least for it, not that we don't get paid well in the Broadway industry. However, we're not making nearly as much as the people at the top. And that's any industry, right? But when excellence is required of you while mediocrity thrives at the top, it doesn't breed more productivity. It makes me go, then what am I trying so hard for? And now we lessen ourselves,
Yeah.
which then makes quality of all suffer. It like that's like we want to talk about trickle down anything, like that's what trickles down.
Yeah.
is
Because if you're not
apathy.
leading right, leading yourself first, and then leading if you're in a position of leadership, the people around you, whether you are considered a people leader or not, doesn't matter. And I think that most people are like, well, this is not my problem. And so it's
Mm,
always the whole, can I volleyball this to somebody else? Can somebody
yes,
else take this responsibility? I send that message on Thursday night, and Friday I've already checked out. And that's how most people function. And then they're
yeah,
like, well, I'm not as far as I want to be. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of, are we the victim? Are we the main character of the story? Or are we the villain? And I think that we all have moments when we're in those positions because we've talked about
I
this
love
before
that
we
you
started
said that.
recording because I have so many stories about where I didn't feel like I was the main character, and then you find out years later that you're the main character of a bunch of other
Mm,
people's story, and we tend to get so wrapped up in, "My god, what is happening to me right now? What is the thing that's going on that is making my life difficult that we forget that people are just like when you were on Hamilton, you're like, this is the pinnacle. You've done so much. Look at all the cool things that you're doing. When you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this really
yeah.
what I want with my life? Is this where I'm going to go? Working through those things and going, life presented me this for a reason. What
Mm,
is the reason? And I think it goes back to this 2020 pandemic piece of people, it was a collective awakening. Whether you chose to take the awakening or not was up to you. And we see it playing out in multiple ways. I think that that's where, I got divorced during the pandemic because when people grow and other people don't, you have to make that decision of like, what does that look like? Friendships, relationships, and going, okay, now we're here. And I think we've finally gotten, we're basically like what, 3-ish years of it being over,
yeah.
and we're finally at this point where people are going, "Oh, well, what is the next thing? And what is this new that's coming in?" And we're recording this end of 2025. So we're both on this page of like, what is this thing that's coming in? And I think
Yes,
it's
we're
really
right at
interesting.
the page turn of next chapter, and I firmly believe
Yeah.
that the next chapter is about to be full of abundance, prosperity, greatness, but that's because of where we are, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
obviously, all the things, and I believe that the higher power, like I said, I'm a faithful person. I call it God, but call it source, call it universe, call it the light, call it whatever you want to call it. I believe it's all the same thing, no matter who we're talking about. Our little feeble human brains can't even process what the master of a universe would be with our like live 78-year human experience, But the grand design of all of that, including our setbacks, are for that awakening and going, okay, everything that's about to come next, I step into it with the full trust and faith that it is going to work out.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, pro, con, and the people, I said this at the beginning, like people like you we've entered each other's orbits now because of the mindset, the awakening, the love that I feel like is led with.
And what we discovered before we started recording was that invisible string of, I've watched you perform. I
Literally.
just didn't know.
And I've ordered from you. I guarantee it. I've ordered from
Yeah.
you.
And so I was working at the Starbucks inside of California Adventure when it first opened. You were performing, and I would walk out into the street and watch the performers all the time when I was done with work. And I would come and then I would do audits on the attractions once I moved into a different position. And so we had this interaction where the universe was like, okay, they're going to cross paths and they're not going to know it. And then randomly on TikTok, they're going to be like, hey, we became best buddies. And so
Yes.
it's those moments of like, I was so heartbroken when I had a job opportunity to come and do audits on all the attractions at Disney. And I got married. And this is a very long, convoluted story. But the idea is that I got married and my spouse at the time was like, I'm not moving to California, and did everything in retrospect to sabotage that. And so
Mm,
I was bitter for years about the fact that I didn't get to go back to the thing that I had wanted to do since I was 4. My goal was to be performing in some capacity. That didn't happen because I decided to go to school for business because being a performer is, everybody tells you it's not practical. You'll not make any money. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to do something. And so I went into business and ended up at the parks anyways. And I was like, okay, cool. This is like everything's getting married together. And then when I lost that, I was like, well, who am I? I worked
mm.
for Radio Disney in Denver, brought my first baby home from the hospital. The day I brought her home from the hospital, they called and said, hey, we're closing all of the radio stations except for the one in LA. So you can move to LA or you can go work at the Disney store. And I was like, well, I just had a baby. I can't
Yeah.
up and move my life to LA because we can't afford that. And so you look at all these things and I watch how that was what, 10 years ago, left 12 years
Mm,
ago? That was a while.
12.
We're not that old. Don't listen to these numbers.
Right. I try not to say my age when I talk about years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then we come across these moments where it's like, "Oh, that's why I was there. That's why that moment happened." Because unless I had pushed to move over to California Adventure, because I was in Tomorrowland, and which has tons of significance. But I was in Tomorrowland at Tomorrowland Terrace and then was like, "I hate it here. I don't
Mm,
wanna do this anymore. Move me anywhere." And they were like, "Starbucks is opening." And I was like, "Great. I love coffee."
yeah, that works.
And so it's funny that, like, we probably had multiple conversations because I talked to
I'm sure.
everybody.
I was at Starbucks most days.
Yeah, and so we had all these interactions, and maybe that's why when I saw you on TikTok, I was like, "He's cool. I'm gonna reach out and see
Yes.
what this is about," and we had this really cool interaction. So, it's looking at all those things that have happened to you and going, "Life is happening for me," and I might
Mm,
not know for over a decade why
yeah.
that's happened.
I like the reframing of how you said that. All these things that are happening to me, that are happening for me. And if we can take our mindset and shift it from I'm the receiver of this thing, like it is, or not even the receiver, but the like, it puts us in so much more control and elevated like center of life if we can say like isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. Negativity doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. Good doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. It puts purpose in a place where there was kind of just like aimless floating. It makes it sound like, excuse me, like if life is happening to you, that doesn't put you at the center of it. That makes you the like passive receiver of this thing, right? Whereas like if life is happening for me, everything is for my greater good, then every step I take has purpose. That's one of the I have this affirmation that I say, and the two lines back to back is every step I take is guided, and every breath I take is blessed. Everything is happening for my ultimate good. I am
Mhm,
safe. I'm supported. I am deeply loved. And I say these things to myself often because how we talk about ourselves dictates how we operate in this world. And for a lot of my life, I consider myself a bridge person, a fixer, a helper. I am an ideas person. Like, and I love to collaborate and brainstorm. So like you provide me a problem, my brain's like, here's 6 things we can do, right? There's some caveats to that, but I love to then go, oh, or did you think about this? And then you're like, oh, but did you think about this? I'm like, ooh, and now we get to this extremely beautiful, great outcome, conclusion, next step to go on. Like that's how my brain works. And a lot of that I feel like stems from my experience in this industry and watching how poor communication comes into play, how lack of communication crumbles a company and ruins morale. That all of that led me to the point of my life that I'm at, including like post pandemic touring life and reassessing like how do I want to be a part of this industry, because it most certainly isn't on the end that I've been on, because we have so little power. I was the ensemble equity deputy, the union rep for the tour of Hamilton when we got back, and I brought up a lot of the concerns of not just me but people in the company, and I was looked at and told, well, the company didn't make you do that. And I was like, no, you didn't make me buy a car, but you don't travel pets anymore. And a lot of us got pets during the pandemic for our own mental health. And since you no longer travel those, that means that we can't take the company travel flight, which means that we're paying, and they buy a group discounted flight. So you're never going to find a flight from here to there for $230. It's going to be $400 now that I'm traveling on my own. So I bought a car because I'd rather put that money towards something that I can like have for life. And we're asking to not have to pay for parking when we come to work. And they were like, well, the company didn't make you buy a car. I'm like, so we were told Broadway's back better, whatever you need, ask for it. And then we asked for the things and we're told, but not that, or take it up with your union. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Because we went from all this time of reevaluating and reformatting what is important to us and choosing to then give all of that stability that me as an actor I've not had. I haven't sat in one place for that long in my entire life. It's always pick up and go. Or I was in rehearsals at a young age, like getting picked up from school, driving to the Inland Empire for rehearsals, finishing at 10 o'clock, coming home, doing my homework, going to bed, waking up, lather, rinse, repeat. And I wasn't willing to be on that hamster wheel anymore. And so I was like, you know what? I was in a relationship at the time that thankfully has ended. It was necessary for it to end. I'm grateful for the time together, everything that I learned in that relationship, but it was not the relationship for me. I can't believe I ever thought that that human being was going to be my spouse for life, but we're here and we're better for it. In that relationship, he asked me, well, if you're not seeing roles that you want to audition for that align with you, like, why don't you write them? And I was like, okay, yeah, let me just write roles for myself because it's that easy. And then I was like, I've worked in this industry my entire life. I was an English minor in college. I graded all of my friends' English papers in high school. The grammar, the writing, I'm a storyteller by trade. Why can't I write my own thing? So
Mhm.
we worked on a short film together that I would still love to have produced. I would love to turn it into a full-length feature one day, and that's still on the docket for me, but I have to figure out how to anyway, that's a story for another time. But one of my dear friends who was a stage manager on tour with me, we realized between the two of us, we have over 40 years of life lived working experience in this industry to tell stories of these people whose stories never get told. We work in an industry where yes, we're very front facing. Our faces are all over promos. We're all over TV. We're all over the stage. People come and watch us, but no one knows who Wesley Ryan is. They're watching Colonial Soldier. They're watching Charles Lee. They're watching Samuel Seabury. They're watching King George. They're watching Lafayette Jefferson, all the roles I've done with Hamilton, right? We're rarely telling our own stories. So we were like, well, what if we did? What would that look like? And that's how this TV show that we've written called Places Please was born, about the behind the scenes lives of a Broadway national tour. I've been saying the tagline is the show must go on, but at what cost? And yes, the backdrop is musical theater, but the themes throughout this show, loss, grief, imposter syndrome, joy, triumph, community, love, childhood trauma, all the pros, all the cons, the universal lived experience, no matter what industry you work in, that we all live through, that we all fight against, telling these stories of these people that in a way that we've never gotten to see. There's plenty of behind the scenes shows, but it's always told from a perspective of like fabrication and entertainment, like dramatization. I'm like, girl, the stories I've lived don't need any extra dramatization. They're
Mhm.
drama enough. Drama for your mama.
My life
And
could be a sitcom.
literally, and so many of us feel that way. You know what I mean? Like if a camera was sitting here watching this moment right now, this would make an epic moment. People would relate to this. People would love this. And so we were like, okay, what does that look like? And so we started developing this world of real human beings. And the human, like to me, this is it's a perspective piece on humanity. It's not a TV show about musical theater. It is a reflection of what all of us live through, go through, work through. It just happens to be told up against this backdrop of musical theater. um one of the reasons why I stay in this industry is the family that you find along the way. Every contract that I've ever worked on, there are the people that, like, even outside of this job, we would have found each other and been a collective. And so it's about the community that's found in the chaos of this world that can be so divisive. The TV show, the industry is the villain. We talked a lot about, being the main character, being the hero, or being the villain. We're all of those things at some point. And I think that as humans, if I could recognize, like, I'll make it about me, not even outward. I'm the villain in somebody's story, probably in multiple people's stories. But if somebody recognized that the day that I snapped at them was the day that my dad died, or the week that my dad died, and that I was a hurt person, it doesn't make how I treated you right, but you might give me a little more grace instead of labeling me a bitch. You might recognize some of the humanity of what a person's going through when you learn their story. We just don't take the time to learn it, because it's easier to label somebody the negative than to take our hurt and kind of put that aside for a moment to see somebody else's lived experience. I try to do that in my life, and I don't feel like I've often gotten that in return. There's a lot of just assumptions made about me. Well, I think one of the reasons why I lessened and littled myself is so I was so fearful of appearing cocky that I was afraid to be confident. Because if people, but what I've realized is that my confidence, how you perceive it, is a reflection of you and your projection,
Yep.
not my intention. And so I can step into spaces now with the confidence of who I am. And if you perceive that as cocky, it does not make it true. I'm not cocky whatsoever.
Yeah, and this comes back to boundaries, because
Mm.
if I say, "I'm going to be this person, I am this person," I write a lot about this idea of being too much. But in the face of being too much, you're also deemed as not enough. Because if I'm
Mm,
too much for you, now I'm also not enough for you because I haven't filled whatever bucket or I've overfilled it in a way that you have now taken as negative. And so
yes.
we see this in the way that relationships go. And so you have to say, I this doesn't make me feel good as a person. So I'm going to make the decision of once I've looked at people because I'm the same way, I'll go, well, why did they have that reaction? Because I'm coming at it from more of a coaching therapeutic standpoint. And I go, that was a really interesting choice that you just made there. Why did you make that choice? And being able to separate the person from the action, which most people can't because we're so involved in ourselves.
Yes.
And then once you've gone through that process, going, this is not okay anymore. This
Mm.
is not something that I'm going to put up with. See if I unfreeze. But one of the things that I was just dealing with this week is that I have a friend who is an avid runner. And we tried dating when I was first single and moved to Tennessee. And we went on a couple dates and we just ended up fighting. And, he said to me one day, he's like, you're a different kind of girl than I've ever dated before. And I was like, why is that? And he's like, well, I've never dated anybody who's fat before. And I was like, excuse me? Did I hear that right? Are we
Did those words just
PHAT?
come out of your mouth?
Yeah. And so
JT, we love it.
So I'm sitting here having this conversation in my head and he just keeps talking. And so I was like, okay, I did not value myself very much because being a single mom, 5 kids, divorced, like at that point in my life, I was like, I'm going to take what I can get. And if this person is willing to
Mm,
love me, even just the tiniest bit or like pretend, then I'll take it because I was just looking for something. And
yeah.
this week he was talking to me on the phone because we're still friends, even though,
I was shocking.
I'm a very forgiving person. He's like, "Hey, I need a sweater for this thing that I'm going to, so I'm gonna have to go buy one, and I don't wanna do that." And I was like, "Oh, well, I have one. You can just come by and borrow it." And he's like, "Well, that's gonna be too big for me. I wear a small." And I was like, "Do you realize that you're an asshole?"
Yeah.
And
Do you
so
realize
we
that
had
you're
this conversation, and I was like, "I have to draw the boundary
mm,
because as much as I know you, and I know that you've gone through different things, like, at some point we have to say, this is the kind of life that I'm going to live, and this is the kind of thing that I'm going to step into. So instead of dragging all of this crap with me that I've taken for years, I'm going to go, let's do this in a different way. Because
yeah.
that's why people keep repeating it, is because we learn something and then we go, well, I'm going to fall back into my old habits instead of going,
Yes.
it's
The
hard to not
comfort of
fall
our
into
king.
them. Yes, it's hard to not fall into them, but we
Yes.
have to do the next thing because if I feel like I'm not worthy enough, I'm not going to ever do this. We had talked before we started recording about the Taylor Swift docuseries.
Mm,
And one of the things that in the second one, Cam gets to talk, and he's one of my favorite humans in the whole entire world. And he talks about how he was in the situation where he thought he was just going to be a teacher. He was just going to teach dance. And then he gets this call to come and audition. They don't know who the performer is. They just know that Mandy Moore is the person who's doing it. He shows up and he's like, my whole life I've been told I'm too overweight. My body's not the right size. Kind of like what you were saying with being too tall.
wait,
Stuff
we
that's
lost
out of
sound.
his control because we can't decide how we're going to be built and how things are going to sit on us. And so he was just like, this is what I love. I'm going to go
Mm,
do it. And ended up being one of the most prolific and amazing dancers and friends to Taylor Swift. And so we see this
yeah.
multiple times. The guy who played Schmidt in New Girl was like on his
Mm,
last dime, had just gotten home from doing a really long shift as a waiter, came in, did it, got the part, and we're all like, how cool would it be to have a life like that? Not realizing that the life behind the scenes is so different. And
yeah.
what you're talking about in Places Please is this Instagram worthy mask that we all put on in order to push ourselves out to the world and go, everything's great. All the contracts have been signed. I'm doing fantastic. When half of us, especially during the pandemic, were like, I'm living on my savings and hoping to God that it makes me through this point. And
Literally.
you finally get to the point where something clicks and you're like, yes, we're moving in the right direction. We're doing these things. And then there's also challenges around the bend. And we have to be careful of like, what do we say? What do we not say? What do we share? If I share this vulnerable moment, are people going to look at me the same way? And then we look at the people that we follow. Like, I love Elise Myers. She's one of my favorite humans. And if we if I could meet her, we would be best friends. And I love her because she's so vulnerable. And so when I
Mm,
tell my boyfriend, I don't want to post that content, he's like, you should talk about this. And I was like, I don't know if I want to post that because what are people going to think? I'm not the go to person. I'm not the professional that they think that I should be. And then he's like, well, why do you follow Elise? Why do you follow Daddy Chats? Why do you follow all these people that are very real?
yeah.
And then, we were having this conversation right before I started seeing your content all. And then when I saw you, I was like, okay, you're showing up how I kind of want to be showing up and how I think that how I show up in real life and when I'm on stages and things like that. And I
Yeah.
was, can I do that online too? And so it was really interesting to like see you start to have these realizations. And I think that that's what you're going to be sharing with the world.
Yeah, that's my goal. I think that we're all craving truth, honesty, and transparency. Not that it's always easy to hear when we're receiving it
Mhm.
from, but to see somebody show up authentically and go and unapologetically for good. You know what I mean? Because like people can be like, well, that's just me. I was like, no, you're just an asshole. But like to show up with kindness, love, empathy, compassion, all of these words that have become trigger words and negatives somehow in humanity. But like everyone looks at this industry, the entertainment industry, and goes, it's red carpets, it's interviews, it's fashion, it's opening night parties, it's glam, it's networking with celebrity and all this thing. It's the Grammys, it's the Met Gala, and no one sees the loneliness, the heartache, the hair loss, the fat shaming, the too old, too young, to this, to that. You don't and we're all too comfortable, especially online. It's really easy to sit behind a keyboard and start commenting on somebody's anything. We're too comfortable with it. Ariana Grande has said this. Like, I don't think we should be comfortable talking about anybody's body, pro or con. Because if I get a haircut that I hate and you're like, come on, haircut, you just drew attention to the thing that I'm not happy about. Even though your intention was to uplift, it has the opposite effect to me. We are too comfortable commenting on appearance. All bodies are beautiful. Every body is beautiful. Every body is welcome. Every experience is valid. And it's one of the things that I through this TV show want to elevate, but I took it a step further and I decided to start my own production company because a majority of my career, I've been waiting for somebody to grab my hand and pull me up. I feel like you kind of mentioned something like this a little earlier, waiting for thing to happen to me that I can go, okay, I'm ready to join you in that because you offered, right? Life to happen to me. And I had this moment. I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. Me and my friend group, we used to make silly videos of us like recreating Harry Potter. They're still up on the internet somewhere, which I love. I refuse to take them down because
Mhm.
they're so like when my origin story happens, these are going to be the videos that we show kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But in Harry Potter 3, Prisoner of Azkaban, I could go back and forth and fight all day about which one's the best. It's Goblet of Fire, but it's fine. Prisoner of Azkaban is a close second. At the end, there's all this time travel, and current Harry is watching past Harry on the lake bank while the Dementors are sucking the soul out of him and Sirius Black. And current Harry and Hermione are sitting there going like, okay, what are we waiting for? And Harry's like, my dad's coming. My dad's coming. I know he's going to do the Patronus charm. I know he's coming. I saw it happen. I know it's coming. And Hermione's like, bro, you're going to die. Like, what are you doing? And he has this moment of realization that no one is coming to save me. It's me. I'm the one that saves me. And then he goes and saves himself, right? Like, I feel like that's what this Places Please through my lived experience came to this point. And then it was my moment of going, no one's going to start the thing that I want to do. It's me. I'm going to be the one that changes the world by building this production company. It's called Our Way Original. It's my initials, RWO, for my legal name. I won't say what that is, but because I don't want people to be able to find me. But Our Way, the letter R, Our Way Original, because I want to do things differently than I've ever seen done in this industry. I want to do them our way, but the play on words,
Yeah.
where it'll never be profit over people. It is community driven, collaborative. Communication is at our forefront. And I think if you're operating in that sense, anybody who is not, it's easier to pinpoint and go, okay, how, like more often than not, when people are not operating in the ways that benefit the community as a whole or themselves, it's from a lack of support in some way. So if we can then pinpoint and go, what is it that you don't have, that you don't need, that you need, that you're not getting? Because if you were getting all the things that you did need, you wouldn't be operating in this way. And then it's easier to go, okay, how can we support you? And I mean the collective we of everything that we're trying to build. I want it to be like co-op style production company where we all have stake in it. We all contribute to it because we're all going to work harder for the thing that we all benefit from. Whether that's your salary, whether that's your benefits, whether that is literal stock and stake in the company. If we're all working towards this collective good, we are going to work. We've all done it for companies that are terrible, right? That don't give a damn about us. But if we were doing those, using our same skill sets that we already have to use towards this collective of like-minded dreamers, lovers, doers, believers, builders, now we've got this, like, it's one thing that I realized. I was like, everything that I would need for this company, for this TV show, I'm maybe one degree of separation from every single thing I've ever done, hindsight being 2020. Every step of my career, every point of contact that I've been in, that's why I believe that we are exactly where we're supposed to be when we are there, because all of it has culminated in this vision, this delusion, I call it, of being like, I can do this. I am doing this. And I'm able to do this, not just because of my own ability, but because of the people that I've met along the way and the people that continue to roll in, pour in, that are like, I love that. I want to be a part of it. You said earlier, you know, being labeled as too much. That is what this company is for. If you've ever been told that's what the Delulu crew is. That's I'm your chief delusionary. And I am leading the charge of delusional human beings that believe that the grand life that they've always wanted is already theirs if they step into it. I believe, like, we talk about manifestation as this like magical thing that we like do, when really, like, I think that the psychology of it is deciding something's yours and then taking every step in pursuit of that thing. Of course it's going to happen. It's not
Well, and there's
magic.
so much science now.
Yes, yes.
Manifestation now has a scientific, here's how this
And
goes.
aura and energy that we attract those things. It's not magic, it's operation, it's alignment. And that thing is a magnet for all the stuff that we would need. And we see, I feel like when we're looking at ourselves through this lens of alignment, we then find, like, then you see, you don't have to wait for 2020 hindsight to be like, well, and that's why that thing happened. You coming into us building this or like internet relationship into this friendship is me recognizing in the moment, and that's why we're here. It's not going, oh, that's why she came into my life. That's why you're in my life currently in the present as we speak. And then making every decision, every step. I also feel like when we're operating that way, it's really easy for me to go, okay, here's what I don't know. How can you help me? I'm not afraid to ask that question. Whereas in other younger like eras of my life, I was too afraid to ask the questions because I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what I was doing. But that's because I didn't feel safe to ask those questions to the people that I needed to ask.
Well, and I think that there's this idea that we get to certain points. Like, you may feel this way too, but I've always been like, well, I wish I would have gotten there 10 years earlier. I wish I would have
Mm,
known this earlier. I wish I would have been able to do X, Y, and Z earlier. And realizing in real time, in that moment, in that time frame, in that age that I would not have been able to hold the things that I have now. And so even in my relationship, I'm like, God, I wish I would have met you first. And he's like, we might not have gotten along if we met each
right.
other because
The
we had
past
to have
versions of
these
us may not have. Yeah.
experience had to refine us. And the science nerdy piece is that energy never dissipates. Like, it doesn't go away. It doesn't, you cannot
Cannot
destroy
be created
energy.
or destroyed. Yes.
Exactly. And so our energy, when we ran across each other in Disneyland, we had the same energy, but we didn't cross paths. We were there together, but we weren't in the space where we could have held
Yeah.
whatever relationship that we would have cultivated at that moment. And so
And
now,
if the opportunity of this had dropped in our laps then, we would have dropped it and fumbled it because we were not
exactly.
strong enough to hold it, in a mindset to hold it. The refinement, I love that word. It's where I'm really at. I feel like the waiting periods of our lives when we're like itching for the next thing, or we know that the next thing is coming and it's just like, I want it, I want it, I want it. But the waiting period is the refinement. I think about it in terms of the faith that I grew up in, the pressure that we're given when things feel like diamonds are created under pressure. Growth happens under the ground in this dark, damp, find pocket of earth. But we're wanting the green growth, but we don't want to set up the root systems that allow that growth to thrive and to withstand the weathers and the storms of life that make us strong enough. The Bible talks about foundation often, and it's a really easy thing to brush off because we're like, well, yeah, like the foundation, but like your house crumbles if it is not built on a solid foundation. Like I'm looking at my mom's house, and like there's like the land that we're on is clay. So when the ebbs and flows, like if it expands and contracts with the weather, when it shifts, now the house is cracking. And we're going, is that foundational or is that just like cosmetic? But like if it's not built on solid ground, whatever you're trying to build, whatever you're trying to create, then it will not withstand. And sometimes that's because we have not been refined. We have not lived the things. Like I was talking to a friend of mine years ago about being thankful for our traumas. And I really had a hard time hearing her say that because I was like, I'm not thankful for those things. Those things ruined me. When in fact, they refined me and made me strong enough to stand where I am, to where now I talk about this often too. Like growing up in the entertainment industry, there were so many auditions that I went on in like middle school, high school, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon. And you hear the things that came out of that for some of these kids. I would not have been strong enough to withstand them at that age. Thank God I did not book any of those things that I thought I wanted so deeply. You know what I mean? I feel like when it comes to like manifestation and prayer, we so often are like, I want this job. I want this thing. I want this relationship. Really, what we're craving is peace and abundance and safety and love. But that job, that person, that thing may not bring us to those things. And then we're like, oh, woe is me. I didn't get the thing. When really you got what you asked for. You didn't want that. You thought you did. Your little pea brain told you those things would have given you all of these things. So now I've changed my tune a little bit. I no longer am willing, manifesting, praying for specifics. I'm like, I want safety, security, strength, growth. That's the other thing. Sometimes we pray for growth and we get rain. And we're like, what is this storm I'm in? How do things have to grow? And sometimes it endures and needs a lot of rain to have the root system, the foundation to withstand all the things that are inevitably going to be thrown at us as life, you know, keeps going.
Yeah, and I love the root system idea because, like, when we met, we were, 23, 22, 23 years old. So we were still babies. And
Yes.
all these years later, as trees grow, they actually start to intertwine their roots as they get bigger. And when you're a baby, your roots are tiny, like you can get pulled out pretty easily. So then you start to get older and wiser and you learn these things, sometimes the hard way, sometimes not. And you start to intertwine things, in which I think this goes back to you asking for help when you need it. This goes back
Mm,
to this idea of these networking opportunities of none of us can do this on our own. We all want to desperately do it on our own. And I think we're taught, especially in America, American dream, you do it on your own, pull, pull up by your bootstraps kind of idea. And then we
yeah.
realize later on that it takes this community of people, these people that will stand by you, and weeding out the ones that are just kind of there in sheep's clothing and saying, who are my people? And I think that you can go one of two ways, which we've talked a lot about in this episode of I am going to see the good in this, even though it does not feel good, or I'm going to see the bad in it and I'm going to live in that bad for forever and let it define me.
Yeah, and let it eat away at you and fester, Like that's where I feel like so many people fall off.
Yeah.
It's a choice. It's a choice to look for the good. And that's not to say that like again, it's gonna feel good, but I think that the shift of perspective to I remember what I was gonna say. People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and we're oftentimes disappointed with where the people and who the people are that fall off along the way. We think somebody's there for a lifetime and they're there for a season, or they're there for a reason to learn this lesson that we needed to. There's so many relationships that have ended for me, romantic, platonic, friendship, otherwise, that taught me so much about it. Took me a long time. We mentioned boundaries earlier. It took me a long time to understand that boundaries are mine to set, maintain, and uphold. You can't breach my boundary unless I let you. No one has the ability to step on your boundary unless you let them. Because the second somebody tries, your boundary then is go, if you're going to keep doing that, then I can't be in this conversation with you, or I can't be in this relationship with you. And if it happens again, I told you that this was not acceptable and I'm going to walk away. But not, you can't do that to me. That's not a boundary. That's a rule that you put on somebody else. And my last relationship, was very much that. Under this disguise of boundaries, it was all rules imposed upon me. And that taught me a lot about how to stand in my strength. I think, I wouldn't say that I'm a people pleaser by any means, but I think when you've done the internal work, we were talking about the whys earlier, why people do things. The people who are better at that are the ones that have looked at the why of themselves. If I sit with me and go, okay, but why do I sit in this pattern? Why do I procrastinate? Why do I do these things? Meeting that thing with curiosity as opposed to guilt, shame, whatever negative word we tend to put upon it. Like, oh, here I go again. Meeting it with curiosity and going, well, why do I do this? What part of me, what part of my history got me to there? Well, that was what I perceived as my safety mechanism. Does that really work for me? Is that really achieving what I want it to, what I need it to? And then it gets easier to look at the why for others. It doesn't excuse our behavior by any means. We're still responsible for the consequences of our actions. But if we can find the why, I think that it does, or at least search for the why. We may not even ever learn the why. Sometimes we have to be okay with not understanding the why and just understand the what and that it was for us, for our benefit, for our ultimate good. I am trying to, that's why I've started this Delulu crew, kind of collective, I'm calling it, because I think that there are so many of us that are searching for the like-minded, real, honest, loving human beings that inspire us to do more. Even if people can look at me or I look at other people and go, wow, they're up here. It can either inspire you to be better or make you envious, which then degrades and degenerates it, right? But if we can realize that we are, like I said earlier, I'm of the mindset that I win, we win. There is no me winning without the us winning. I don't care how much fame amount to or how much money I get, that will always be poured back into community and to amplify the voices of one of the things I want to do with this production company is amplify the voices and stories of those whose stories and experiences often go overlooked. People of color, people with disabilities, queer people, people on the spectrum, people who are neurodivergent, people who don't necessarily assimilate into the social norms that we've agreed upon for some reason because they don't work for so many of us. And if we can, I think in the amplification of those stories and voices, we find so much more collective, mutual understanding. Because I'm like, wow, that is exactly how I feel. And we work in two different industries. We come from two very different backgrounds. And that is exactly, I have not been able to verbalize that thing, and it inspires myself and others to do better, strive for more when we see people, doing just that and living authentically and vibrantly and loudly while not taking away from anybody else because it's possible. The entertainment industry pits us against each other. It's me or you. Either I'm going to get this job or you are, and we're in competition for this thing. And I'm like, if I don't get a job, I hope one of my friends does. I hope you book it. I want you to book it because I don't want anybody to not have.
Yeah.
And I recognize that we can't all have the same things, So I'm like, this Delulu crew that we're building is really just the people who have not felt like they had a voice, people who have been told they're too much. Also, if someone can't hold you, that's a reflection of their weakness, not your size or your, too muchness, for lack of a more eloquent way to put that. That is a reflection of their inability to hold, not anything to do with you. And if I try to tell young people that I do a lot of master classes all over the globe, but I tell people often, you have specific skill sets and a specific voice and abilities that I don't. You can do things that I can't. Even if you look at me and go, but they're doing all this stuff, I still can't do what you do, which is why your voice is important. And if anybody ever tells you that you can't, that's their projection. That is not your ability or your worth. And if we can get out of that, I think we would go. And I hope that that's what's going to come up, especially millennials raising children, right? I think we're going to teach, they're going to have their own traumas and their own setbacks and their own struggles, but it won't be the ones that we got. Because I think I watch my best friend, the way that she parents. Yes, you have to do what mom says, but not because I said so. The reason is for your safety, your protection, and your ultimate good. You may not see that because it doesn't feel good to be told that you can't play with your toys right now, or you can't leave that thing there, or you can't touch the stove. But it's because you will get hurt, not because mommy said so. And we were raised with children are meant to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Don't do that thing because I'm the parent. I'm like, but it doesn't make sense for the other things that you're like, and then if we question, now we're talking back. You know, like we weren't allowed to meet with curiosity.
And we treat our jobs like that now.
Mm.
We don't come into the workplace no matter what we do and go, "That doesn't seem right." Unless we have had these experiences like you and I have, because we were told, "You were seen and not heard, you did what you were supposed to do, if you wanted to be the good kid, you followed the rules." And the people who follow the rules are not the people who change history.
No,
Rules are meant to
never.
be broken, and I tell my kids this all the time. I have a son who's 9, and he's like if I say "because," he's like, "You can't say because I said so. I need a reason bigger than that." And I was like, "Yes, and sometimes it is just because this is something that you can't understand and it needs to be done." But that questioning, that healthy, "But what is this? Like, why am I doing this?" is so good, and I think it goes back to this idea of play that we talked about at the very beginning of, can I be curious? Can I go into this? And one of the things I tell my clients all the time is, you have this big goal. You're doing this big thing. Great. It's scary. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in order to get to that next step that you want to be in, that you keep telling me that you want. What if it was just an experiment? What if we just played with the idea? What if we just put something out there and, it's not that big of a deal? We all know this from being on social. If it doesn't hit, it doesn't hit, and nobody sees it anyways. So
Yeah,
what
you're
if we
out
just
nothing for it. Yeah.
exactly, and so what if it does hit? Then maybe it would hit for the people who needed to see it, and you'd
That
have to
part.
continuously show up and go, "Okay, great. Let me keep showing up as me. Let me keep showing up as me. Let me keep showing up as me." And when we hit hurdles, instead of going, "Well, I didn't get this because I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm a man, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing." What if it was like, "Okay, great. Now how do I get past that? How do I
Mm.
fix that?" We were talking earlier about how both of us are fixers. What is the next piece for you? And being able to say, yes, there are bad people. Yes, bad things happen. And still being able to say, even in those bad things, I'm going to look for the good. Because this is what I love about the show, I love about the Delulu crew, is even when hardship happens, that's what makes the story. Because if somebody came up to you and said, "I was the most popular person in high school and I grew up with rich parents and I have a trust fund and everything's been so good and I married the perfect person and I have the perfect kids and I've got the perfect career," you'd go, "Cool, that's real boring. I'm not going to
Yeah,
watch
and
that movie."
not experience that I know anything about, you know?
Exactly.
That's one of the things that, um, the powers that be at Hamilton, the creative powers that be, they reference often. We have this, they call it the 80-20 rule, sometimes it's 90-10. Like, no one wants to watch somebody succeed all the time, all the time, all the time. No one wants to watch you get to the like the bullet, for example. You know what I mean? No one wants to watch you catch the bullet and then hold it there. We want to watch you get almost there, catch the bullet, and then go a little bit further before it hits, because that puts us on the edge of our seat and makes us sit forward and want to learn more. When you like without our setback, our triumphs, not that they mean nothing, but they're not as relatable because like we all root for the underdog, right? Every story we're like, man, 3/4 of the story, they lost every game. And then right at the end, they win the championship. I can't believe I just made a sports reference. What is going on? I was so
We
not
all
a
do it. And we're all like, do I understand that enough to actually
I'm
talk
like,
about
did
that?
I use that right? That'll be the only time you hear me make a sports reference.
Mhm.
But we don't want to watch, like you said, somebody who's had it all handed to them. That isn't relatable. It's not interesting to me, and it doesn't lead to positive character development, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think the people that grew up the most popular, the people that had the
Yeah.
trust, they are a certain type of person that they're the delusional ones that are underqualified that go out and get the jobs because they are able to like delusions of grandeur doesn't tell them that they're like they you mentioned earlier, like not having the imposter syndrome. I'm like, whoo, we need to start being delusional enough to believe that we have it already. To
This is
have
why I
them,
love method acting.
yes, get into it, get sit in it
Crazy
and
stories.
experience.
Yeah. Like my 7-year-old, she's has not been great at spelling. And their teacher one day, just out of funness, was like, "Put whatever name you want." After Taylor Swift's album came out, my 7-year-old decided that she is Elizabeth Taylor. She has made us reference her as Elizabeth Taylor and will not answer to anything but Elizabeth Taylor. And I was like, "This is hysterical. Whatever. You can be Elizabeth Taylor. She was really cool."
Also,
So
yeah,
she
the fact
writes
that she
Elizabeth Taylor.
doesn't know Elizabeth Taylor to come up. She's like, I just am Elizabeth Taylor, girl.
She does, and I was like, "You don't really know anything except for this one song by Taylor Swift, but you
Yeah,
relate to this." And so she wrote that on her spelling test and gets 100%. Never have gotten 100% ever. She usually gets 5 to 7 of the 10 wrong. And
Yeah.
I was like, Elizabeth Taylor's good at spelling. What is this? And so I start like backtracking this with her and having conversations with teachers about this of like, can we try this a little bit more? Partly for my own
Mhm.
research and partly because I think that this is actually going to be super helpful for her. And
And
so
for her
we have
development, but also scientifically, I'm
exactly. Yes, yes, yes. The researcher in me is like, how did this happen? We didn't
yeah.
do
What
anything
what
different
in
than we
her
normally
brain
do.
tells her that Elizabeth Taylor yeah.
And so being delusional and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go do this thing, and if I have to pretend to be something else, somebody else, in order to do said thing, then so be it. You still, at the end of the day, get to the same result that you're hoping
Yeah.
for."
Like, same conclusion, absolutely.
Exactly. And it's the same thing when you were like, everything bad happens to me. Look at all these terrible things. How poor me. And if you play the victim too long, nobody wants to watch that either. So it is
Right.
this delicate hero's journey balance of what does this look like for you to actually go through the hero's journey and how much of life is that? And if we
Yeah.
can look at that and go, okay, well, I'm here in the hero's journey. What's next? Then it gives us an idea of what is to coming. Can I be excited about the fact that I've gone through the really crappy part of the hero's journey and I'm at the bottom of that circle and I'm starting to make my way up and realizing that life is a cyclical going through the hero's journey over and over again,
Yes.
ideally getting better, getting to self realization
With each
that,
rotation, yes.
yeah, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and getting to the top and going, look at that. Look at how
Yeah.
much better I am. And then consistently learning over and over and over again.
It also makes you an active participant in it when you are
Mhm.
choosing like we talked about earlier, like, instead of life happening to me, if it happens for me or, like again, it's I never wanna sit here and go, "Find the good in your shitty life," you know? But, like, this thing sucks. Losing your job sucks. Not being able to pay your bills sucks. I'm not taking that away. I'm not trying to be like, "And this is for my character development," because that doesn't feel good either. You know what I mean? But to go I feel like the thing that has released me lately is to go, "And I'm always taken care of." If I look back, the bills have always gotten paid, even if I was right up against the deadline. I got the next job, even if it was a year without booking anything. The circle does come back around. And knowing that that happens, then I go, okay, well, what do I need to do in the meantime? I think like one of my problems is that I like to look at, I'm great at dreaming big. I can map out the next 10 years of my life and go, here's all the things I want to accomplish. And then I struggle to take the little step and to do the next little thing. Okay, well, I like, cause I want to be there so bad that then like the little step feels like, what's the point? But you don't get to the top of the staircase by, I mean, you can skip some steps, but you don't just step from the bottom to the top. You know, you've got to take that climb. And I know people say all the time, it's about the journey, not the destination. And like, it really is true. Like, if you know, any video game, right? If you don't get wow, I'm also not a video gamer. What is happening? But like, if you build the XP points along the way, you're strong enough to defeat the boss. If you went from the level 1 to final boss, you're going to die with one shot from that boss, right? And I think that we don't often give enough credit to each step of the way because it doesn't feel significant to the big goal, but it really is. It's like is so important. Each of those little steps and each of the people that we meet along the way, you know, like think about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, like meeting the Scarecrow, the Tin Man and the Lion, like those each of those experiences of those people and what they experienced taught her something about actually what it means to be home and what she missed about home. Like if it wasn't for that, like, you know, I joke that Glinda's the villain, not just because of Wicked, but like even I just posted a video about this on TikTok the other day. Well, by the time this airs, it'll have been months ago, but nonetheless.
Never thought of this too until I had seen it right
It
before, and
is
I was like,
crazy.
so
This
crazy.
woman looks at her dead in her face and says, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" And then not 3 minutes later, not even, a minute and 50 seconds later, she's like, "Well, only bad witches are ugly." Did you just what?
And you're
Then you
like,
should have
wait,
known that I wasn't a bad witch, honey.
yeah,
But, you know, at the end, she's like, "Oh, you click your heels together 3 times, you've had the power to go home all along, but you wouldn't have believed me if I told you. If I told you that you right now where you are, you already have the production company, Places Please's existence, and I want to start a youth arts outreach ministry, which we haven't really talked about, but for disability, neurodivergent, underprivileged young people, whether that's socioeconomically, racially, whatever, financially. But if you told me 15 years ago that I have the power all along to do that, I would not believe you.
Mhm.
I needed to go through the last 15 years of going, oh, it is me. All I got to do is click my heels together 3 times and say there's no place like home, you know? And so I like there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and I've had this exact situation happen to me, and I'd never really thought about it from the Dorothy perspective till you just said that, but when I started therapy, I was married for 10 years to a pastor, which just adds an extra layer of crazy
Like,
to the
we have
story.
to
I
talk
know
about.
so much. I'm so excited. But through this whole entire experience, I was like, okay, well, it must be me. I must be the problem. If I fix me, then I'm going to fix my marriage. Because
Mm,
as a first child, as a high performer, I don't fucking give up. I'm like, I will figure this out and I will push through no matter what it takes. Well, I
yeah.
go to therapy and I walk in and, I have this conversation with her. And it was a really tough conversation where she was like, I came back the second day and she hugged me. And I was like, what? What? She's like, last week I thought that you weren't gonna end up coming back. Fast forward 3 years later when I finally was like, "Okay, it's not me. I am not the
Mm,
problem in this situation, and I can't change what other people are doing and the decisions that they're making," and I finally decided to get the divorce. She was like, "I knew that this day was gonna happen the moment you walked into my office the first time." And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me, lady? Think about
right.
all the time we could have saved."
And
And she's like,
money.
"You wouldn't have
Therapy's
believed
expensive.
me." Yeah. She's like, "You wouldn't have believed me. You wouldn't have
Yeah,
taken this and actually gone through with all of these things." And
absolutely.
I sat there and I stared at her and I went, "Well, fuck, you're right. I wouldn't have believed you because I went through 6 different marriage counselors
Yeah,
while doing my own therapy with her, convinced that if I found the right person, if they said the right thing, if we did the right little piece, that I could save something that was already beyond broken."
yeah,
And so this goes back to all the things that we've talked about throughout this whole entire episode of boundaries, knowing what your worth is. And sometimes, unfortunately, we have to go through the really shitty decade of marriage, whether that's actual marriage or just the things that we go through, to realize here's all the lessons I had to learn along the way in order to get me to a place where I'm refined enough to now go, I don't fucking care what people think. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to ask for what I want. And I hope that these things, especially if you're a little younger than us, that you're learning these things a little faster than we did because our parents didn't. They either didn't know or they weren't trying. We were not going to give them a pass. And
right. I think about my
in that
mom often.
process,
I'm like, she passed down tools that she herself didn't learn.
yes.
And that's okay. I mean, we end up parenting our parent as we get older, but and I never wanna be not as a reflection of her in a negative way, but I never wanna be the person that stops learning. I know that it gets harder to do that. I think that we're a generation where we experience so much change from the, like, we were raised without the internet, with the like, as the internet blew up, and then now on the internet as adults, right? And there's always so much to learn, and I think that looking to younger generations is a great way to learn because 'cause they're gonna be the ones that inherit what all that comes next, right? So learning what their struggles are and how to provide them the tools that we learned, but for the context of the world in which they're gonna come up in and living in, I think that's how we change the world, right? If we can raise the next generation of loving children that don't sit there on the internet and go, "Well, you're a piece of shit," or "I hate your top," or you know what I mean? Not that's going to fix everything in the world, but when we get to a point where we're no longer accepting the negativity of the status quo and we decide that we're going to raise a generation of young people that are going to stand above it and stand out from it, there is no taking that on. Like I look at all these like, these collective uprisings like Gen Z and I mean Italy was one, France was another one, Sri Lanka was another one where people were just like no more. I mean, it
Hmm.
got no media news coverage in the US because they don't want us to realize that we the people have the power. But the takes the collective of people going, "Oh, I'm worth more than this. I should be valued more than this." I
Well, and
think one
it's
of the
everybody being valued. And I think that
yeah,
that's something that we have lost is that a person, it goes to this Horton Hears a Who. A person is a person, no matter how small, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from, no matter their economic status, no matter all the things that you could fill that blank in with. And we have, as a collective
mm,
human experience, have gone, well, this person is different. So thus they are not enough. And That's something that has been plaguing humanity for generations. So we can't just blame anybody who's alive now because all the people that this started with are dead. But
Right.
now we know better. So now we should do better. And I think that that is where we have to start saying as a generation, and I think it really started kind of with the millennials because we did have to grow in such a different way. We weren't raised with the old dog, new tricks idea that our parents were raised with because now we realize through the science that we're learning that your brain never stops being able to learn. It never stops
We
being
just
able the
gotta open new
plasticity
neural
of it.
pathways. Yes.
Exactly. And so now that we know those things, now we have to do better. And we learn something new. Now we have to do better. There's a study that just came out that babies crying it out is actually terrible for their development and makes it to where they don't have the same kind of safety that they need. And so no wonder some of us have the issues that we have. And now we have to like fix those things and do better with the next time. So there's never going to be like a we fixed everything. We're going to learn things. We're going to realize things as we go, but everybody collectively, if we could all come together and be like, yes, this is wrong. Why do we do this? Why is this the
Mm.
reason? And then ask those questions enough to where we can now move forward and do better. Because there's so many things that are great things that have happened that we've moved so far forward in. And then there's still a lot of things where we're like, well, we still don't have the same equality that we need. We still don't have X, Y, and Z moving forward in the workplace. We don't have those things that you and I have been talking about. Being a person and says, hey, I might not be able to do all of this by myself, but I'm going to put the voice out there so that the people who are and who can come together and do this right. Because a snowball is not going to
Words out of my I was literally sitting
love
here
it.
going, "Snow avalanche." Absolutely.
Yeah, because a snowball rolling down the hill doesn't do anything. But as it collects snow, all of a sudden now we have a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that's why people hate TikTok. They hate this idea of social media because we
Read.
can come together,
Mass
we can do big
information can
things.
get put out. Yes.
Exactly. Like, and then they're like, well, all these young kids are getting their news from TikTok. How immature of that. And we're like, actually, we're the people who are reading the research. We're doing the things. We're coming in and we're
And
saying,
sharing, like, truthful information. Like, the
mm,
news sources that we have on TV are regurgitating whatever
yeah,
the status quo they're trying to maintain is under the like, whether it's right-wing news or left-wing news, they're part of the same corrupt.
they are.
There is no truth in what they're like detailing anymore. It's all for whatever the narrative, whatever propaganda they want to put out. So that's why like social media, TikTok especially, is such a threat to them because I can in one post, if it gets enough snowball attraction, can reach millions of people like that.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
dangerous to the status quo,
it
especially
is.
when that quo is built on the backs of like the mediocrity of white men.
Yeah, we can go into a whole conversation about
The people are, I mean, the global majority are not white men. Like
well, and
women
I
are
think that
50%
there's
of the population.
yeah, we're more of a most people are middle ground.
Yes.
And we live in this day and age where the parties that we talk about are so far different than what they were when they started that nobody is actually one side or the other. We're all more like this, and there's a line in the middle. And I think a lot of us dance around this line, and there is nobody standing for that. So, as a collective, as the people who that are supposed to be running the country, have to say, as a collective, what does this look like? We want
Mm,
better. We're moving into a new year, a new cycle. What does that look like? What do
yes.
we
What can
want?
that look like?
Instead of
Yeah.
complaining about it and going, "Oh god, all these people. Here's
And
what
then
this price is."
apathy ensues and we do nothing because, well, that's just the system. You know, I
Mhm.
think I have said a number of times, I feel like I'm a bridge person. And one of the reasons for that is that I have never lived in an or world. I am half black, half white. It was never or, it was always and. And I live by that motto to this day. One of the themes of my character's episode of the TV show, because obviously I'll be starring in this thing, because duh.
Mhm. You are the main character.
Hello, 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 hello. But two things can be true. This can be the worst thing that ever happened to me and can be the start of the best time of my life. I can be like, I think about Hamilton in that regard. I was so lonely, distraught, hair falling out. And it was the pinnacle of my career that led me to everything that I needed for this TV show to come about. For my career, for like Hamilton made me believe that I was talented enough to do this thing. Granted, it started with this like awful start of self worth questioning, imposter syndrome, of doubt, of fear, of worry, of anxiety. But because of all those things, by the time it got to 3 years on the national tour and then the international tour coming out, and I was like, well, I want to be a part of that, but I want principal coverage. And they were like, okay, here's man two, Samuel Seabury, and you'll understudy the king. And I was like, great. And they were like, we're going to Australia. Anybody want to go? I was like, yes, but I want more principal coverage. And they were like, okay, here's Lafayette Jefferson. I would have never asked for those things at the start of Hamilton. I would have felt like I had to do more to earn it. And after the pandemic, after another year on the road of more setback, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep working in this industry, but it's never going to take from me again the way that I let it before. That's my boundary, right? I'm not going to do this if it does not serve me. And that goes for anything, not even just career. Like, and that's not to say like we cut people off without, a second thought. Obviously, I'm a person, the why, the empathy, the care. I'm gonna say, okay, this thing that you've done has harmed me or has hurt me or whatever the thing is. We're gonna discuss it because I love you and I care about you. If that pattern of behavior continues, this is not a friendship I can stay in.
And not
I didn't.
staying too long. Because
Yes,
I think
that.
that most people, especially when you are a heart-centered person, we will stay too long in a bad situation, job,
Yes.
relationship, friendship, whatever it is, and we wait until, no, this has already destroyed X, Y, and Z in my own life and my peace and my safety, and then we cut it off. And then we're the bad guy because we finally said no. And being okay with being like, I might be the Thanos in somebody else's story and going, cool. You made
Yeah.
choices, I made choices based on those choices, and now we have to just move forward.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, not everybody is meant to be friends. Not everybody is meant to be in each other's lives. There are people that I'm sure I rubbed the wrong way. That's not gonna stop me from being the same honest, loving, open, empathetic, caring person that I am. We're just not call it our star signs, call it whatever. Maybe our
Mhm.
traumas have built us into these people.
Yeah,
We don't need to be friends, and that's okay. I wish you no ill will. Be you, baby, over there.
exactly.
Because
Being
it
able
needs
to
to be
Yeah, and doing that in a way that's really healthy
yes.
over trying to people please and be the person who's always the nice guy.
Yeah.
Because when you're the nice person, there's a lot of etymology behind the word nice. I want to be kind. I don't want to be nice because being kind
Yes.
is
We
very,
should all
very different.
strive. Yes, very different. People talk about the East Coast and the West Coast a lot. LA is nice but not kind. New York is kind but not nice. Like if you're on the side of the road with your tire blown out or broken down on the side of the road, in LA we're gonna go, oh, that poor person. That's nice. In New York, they're gonna be like, pull over, help you change your tire, and be like, why didn't you have chains on this? You know it snows out here. Like you're
Mhm.
an idiot for that, but I'm still gonna help you do the thing. I'm gonna act with kindness, but I'm not. I'd like we should be striving for kindness, not niceness. And I think that's a misconception because we conflate the two words,
Yes, we
and they
decide to make
not,
them synonyms instead of
yeah,
these are two totally different things.
right, two separate concepts. And I think that I've spent a lot of my life trying to be nice
Yeah. Well,
and
and that's
not
what
say
we're
that
taught.
on the toes. Yeah, I mean that's
Mhm.
like I'm going back to the etymology of words. We're taught this like memorization version of things instead of understanding the words that we, and it's for a good reason. It's by design because if we don't understand the words we're saying, I
Because
firmly
our
believe
words create our reality.
our words are spells. And the
Mhm.
way and I say that like even the way that I speak about myself now, I don't say things like I'm broke. I say the money is on its way to me. It may not be in my bank account right now, but it's on its way to me because I am not definitively broke. I am not even emotions. I am not angry. I'm feeling anger.
Yeah,
So
I'm not
let
going to
so and
define
feelings,
myself.
yes. I was talking to another about this, like, Alcoholics Anonymous. Every single day they go and they say, I'm an alcoholic. Well, yeah, you are. You are now when you claim it every single day. Now that they keep you in this thing, in this loop, instead of being like, I'm a work in progress. I love that because that means I'm always striving towards more, which I am. I like my mantra or my affirmation. I am safe. I am supported. I am deeply loved. Those are facts about
Yes.
my life. I am not poor. I am not sad. I am not lonely. I am not depressed. I am not anxious.
Well,
I might be
and
feeling anxious.
yes, your subconscious doesn't actually input not.
Differentiate.
It does
Yeah.
not. So we have to say, I am. X. We can't say, "I am not poor." We have to say,
Mm,
"I am wealthy. I
see,
am on
healthy.
my
I
way."
am, yeah.
Yes, yes, because there's this phenomenal book. There's 2 things. There's this phenomenal book that I got for my kiddos because it's Christmas and the school needs 16,000 things from you in December when you're already spread thin. And it's called The Magical Yet. And it's a children's book about what is coming. I might not be there yet. I don't know how to do that yet
Yes, yes.
because I don't know in your brain turns it off. So your
Yeah,
brain has to find an answer. I don't know is one of those answers that will let you close the loop without you ever finding out. And so
and
I
without even
try.
realizing that that's what you're doing.
Exactly. I try to never say I don't know. And if I do
Yes.
catch myself saying I don't know, I say I don't know yet. I haven't figured it out yet because I will get there. I will
Yeah.
figure it out. Everything is
You
figure
always
outable.
do, you know?
Well, and my
And it gives us hope. A thing to strive towards as opposed to like, yeah, like we're talking about a definitive period
mhm,
in that sentence. I don't know. I don't know yet. I am learning that thing. I will learn. I may not have the tools or the understanding now. I said this to you earlier. I don't know my blind spots in a new car, but I'll whip my minivan through New York City and parallel park it like it's my job. Once you learn those things, I am a quick learner. I'm a quick study. But if I don't have the access to the information at the moment, that does not mean that won't get it or that I can't ask for it. And
yeah,
sometimes all it takes is driving the car around for a little while to be like, oh, she's a little wider in the back than I thought it was. And now I'm telling you, I parallel parked this thing last night, one go. I didn't even have
mhm,
to turn it. It was just like, because I know the vehicle so well. And that's what I strive for in my life is to learn whatever vehicle I'm in. That's
yeah. It's the
including my friendship.
mastery.
Yes. Oh, speak like, we have this saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And that's where we put the period.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. You finish it.
Because it's so crazy to me. But
Mhm,
the rest of the and we use that as a society. I mean, not me as
mhm,
a we. Society as we uses that as a limitation. It's bad to be a jack of all trades, but the actual saying ends is oftentimes better than a master of none. It is better for
master of
you to
one. Yeah, yeah,
all trades than a master of just one of them. Learn
yeah,
all these things with all these skill sets. And I feel like going back to the hindsight is 2020 thing, all of those things that we learn along the way, if we didn't have all of those jack of all trades moments, I tell
yeah,
kids all the time, try something. Try something that you're not even planning on monetizing. If you want to knit just to knit, knit. If you want to learn how to code, also going back to MySpace, we were coding websites in
yeah.
like middle,
We were
which
so
is
stinking cool and we didn't even know we were cool.
we didn't even know it. And we were like, and our parents were like, well, this is stupid. They're on the internet too much. I was like, I'm literally building a website. Like, what are you doing? But I try to tell young people to just try things. We're so afraid of being cringe and looking cringe and coming across as cringe. I'm like, be cringe. You learn the most in being cringe. You learn how your actual people are, who's there for you and who has your back. Because
Yeah,
my friends never think I'm cringe. If anything, they think I'm funny and we laugh about the fact that I tripped. You know what I mean? But you learn what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to do more of just for
want
fun.
fast.
Yes. And like I feel like, we were the generation. I still think it's crazy that we tell 17, 18-year-olds to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives at that age. They are children.
Yeah. And
And
their
they're like,
brain is not completely developed yet.
for like
They need
another
to
10
take a year
years.
off.
Like it's
And so I tell my kids, I'm like, I will not bless your marriages until you're after that 21 mark. I will not do any of these things because I need you to know exactly where you're going. And you're going to think that you know where you're going. And I'm going to just be like, hey, we're going to push the brakes on this. Let's put a pin in it. It's not a no forever. It's just a no right this second. And what does that look like for you? And I love how you said that your words are spells because my now 5-year old, when she was 4, was sitting on my lap and she loves someday when we're talking, she'll come and sit on my lap and she loves to like repeat things after me and parrot me in the midst of me talking. So it's like
yeah.
sentence, me say it and then she says it. And I'm typing something and she couldn't read yet. And she was like, Mommy, what are those spells that you keep putting down? And I
Yes.
sat there and I was like, interesting. I like that you say these things. I will take my magic wand now and put
Yes.
it out
And
there.
also, what do we do with words? We spell them.
Mhm.
The etymology of the word itself. We teach kids spelling. Granted, we teach them like memorization, like I said, because that's what I
Mhm.
was also going to say. We oftentimes say I understand, and understand the etymology of that word is to stand under, which means to be controlled by, to like be subservient. So like I don't even like to use that phrase. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand it I'm working towards understanding, sure, but I don't want to be under the thing.
Be interested to, like, look and see what comprehend is then. We could get
Ooh.
nerdy later, I'm excited for
I would
this.
love to. I would love to because I like to understand the why, and not just about myself, not
Yeah.
just about you, but of like verbiage and language and the why of even why we do things the way that we do now. You know, we love a box in America, whether that's tick the box for what you are, or you know, again, I live in an or world, so the box is never like or and world. I mean, so the box has never made sense to me because I was multiple of these things. I am queer. I am bisexual in that queerness. So it's men and women and everything in between. It is not or. Like I said, I'm black and white. I am queer and faithful. Like the two things can exist at the same time. I have never been able to tick one box. I don't, my brain does not compute to being like, well, what am I? And you narrow it down to one thing. I'm like, I am a universe of a cornucopia, if you will, of what's the word I'm looking for? Contradiction and beauty and strength and all of these things that exist all at the same time inside me. And we're not taught to embrace that. We're taught to
And
limit it.
it is, and people do not like to sit with cognitive dissonance because
Mm,
it feels like there is an actual feeling when somebody says, "Well, that's black and it's white." Then people go, "Well, I can't comprehend that." So the
right.
cognitive dissonance goes, "I have to just I have to put it somewhere." And instead of just admiring the fact that, like, there's those butterflies that have one wing that's one color and one wing that's another color, and we don't actually know why it happens, it just kinda
Yeah.
does. And so, this idea of everything is this way and everything's the same, like monarch butterflies are one of my favorite things because there's regular monarch butterflies that die super fast, and then there's super monarch butterflies that make the transition across the country, and we
Mm,
have no idea why they do that.
yeah.
Why do they well, we're like, "Okay, well, they survive that way." It's like, "Okay, well, but why are there some that are chosen to be super monarchs and some that aren't? And how does that happen? And what is the situation?" And it always happens at the same amount of time. It always
Mm,
happens around the same season. And so you go, there's all these patterns, there's all these flows that happen consistently. And then when they happen in our own lives, we go, "Well, why did that happen?"
yeah.
Instead of learning from it and going, "Okay, well, we know that there's gonna be this hero's journey where we're at the bottom. What have I prepared? What have I put into savings? What have I put into relationships in order to withdraw from at that moment in time when I need it?" And I think
Yes.
that we don't learn from our experiences. I won't even call them mistakes because sometimes these things are outside of our control.
Yeah.
And I still will sit here and tell you, I have no idea why I had to marry the person that I married and be in a relationship for 10 years and the shit that happened during that relationship. I still am in this spot 2.5 years out of it going, I don't know what all of that was for. And still having to go, cool, I see why I had to do some of these other things. And eventually I'll see why this happened.
I mean, even
Hopefully.
if it's not to diminish this at all, I'm gonna say it this way, but I don't mean it diminishing. Even if the only reason was for the 5 children that you are going to raise and what they're gonna bring about in the world. If watching you make this decision and stand in your power that makes them go, "I will never sit in that. I will never accept that." Now you've just changed a whole you've broken a generational curse of accepting less than we deserve. Like, my best friend is going through something similar. Her children are much younger, but she said that to me. She's like, "Even if my 2 daughters learn to never settle for a man that is not going to love them the way they deserve to be loved, if that's the only thing that this experience of the last 12 years of being in this relationship taught me to for them to see and learn, it will have all been worth it." It doesn't make it feel any better, and there's so many other things. Like, it's watching her become this person that she has through just the strength of walking away. It takes a lot of strength to walk away, as I'm sure you know.
I think
I
that
may
you have
not
to
be
know
true.
that it's not just the kids, because I think that one of the things that I was told very early on was like, "Well, at least you have them." And you go, "Well, do I mean anything?" And so it's like looking back and going, "What is the thing that I needed to learn aside from the other humans that I created?"
Mm,
As cool as making life is, and the fact that we can do it as creatures is weird,
crazy.
to have fingers and toes and thoughts and do the shit
To
that
grow
we
a
do as
heart
humans.
inside of your body is wild.
It is crazy, but, like, what do you learn from this? And I think that a lot of times people get stuck in the, "Well, somebody else learned from this," and going, "Okay, how can I figure this out for me and move forward as me?" because you don't wanna get lost in the, "Well, somebody else got to get the leg up because of this." And I think we see
Mm,
this in so many different parts of history where somebody will go, "Well, this person gave up their life for fill in the blank." Or, "Here's this person who was" I was just listening to a TikTok where somebody was telling a story about, like, "This is the person that we got these cool famous people out of it, but it was because of this person that we don't even know their name." And the fact that we did the disservice as the person at the top to not know that person's name,
mm,
that to me is a disconnect, and I think that as a society, learning how to find that person and do their name, not to harp on Cam too much, but one of the things that he does in this docuseries is he brings his mom in, and he's like, "Of course I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for the
right.
sacrifices that you gave." And, her getting that spot that she wouldn't have gotten otherwise in the situation that she was in is so telling of, like, we have to what you were saying earlier, we're looking to the older generations and we are parenting them in some ways. And we're also looking to the younger generation and going, well, what are you learning that we can learn from this? And how can we share this? And instead of millennials and Gen X, and like I'm dating a Gen X, and we have conversations all the time, and he teases me about being a millennial all the time. And so then I can tease him, but then it's also like, what do we learn from each other of the different
Yeah.
experiences that we have? And then what am I learning from my friends that are Gen Z and then my kids who are Gen A of like, what is this experience, this life experience that we're having and not trying to stick us in any box because we're this age or we're this thing. Because as helpful as stereotypes can be when we're studying, it also can be that detriment of how do we get
Yeah.
where we need to go.
Well, like there's this internet debate about Gen Z versus millennials and how blah blah. Like I've seen this one video where it's like she's like a Gen Zer being like, we need to actually like pair up with the millennials because of whatever. And I'm like, exactly that. Like, yes, we have these generational boxes, but we are all humans doing this thing together. And so how do we we look at the boomers and go, oh, you got us into this mess, right? And now we're not collaborating with them on what they did learn and vice versa. They're not collaborating with us to understand the world that we grew up in that does not exist. Their world does not exist anymore. The fact that you could be a janitor and support an entire family while your wife didn't work is crazy.
Yeah.
Like that would never happen today. Your wife
Well,
has to
even just
work.
having one income in a
Right.
household, it just doesn't happen.
Impossible. Impossible. But yeah, the collaboration across generations, and it's one of the, like, going back to the production company, it's one of the things that I want to utilize is this like multi-generational thing, having people in all managerial positions from all generations of things, because like a Gen Z person, they don't take any shit. Granted, to the detriment, they'll get up and quit before they even tried to do anything, because if it's a minorly inconvenient, they're like, it doesn't work. Like we need to have a little bit more of the try in there. Or not even try, but like wait. Let's wait and
Mhm,
see. But I love that they're like, oh no, I've had 5 jobs in the last 3 years because if it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for me, and I quit. Where our parents be like, no, you sit there and you tough it out for 40 years. And then there's us that's like, well, we can't afford anything. So this
mhm.
job that I want is paying me enough and whatever else. But like to be learned from each of the generations and how we operate. That I have an older brother, but I was raised mostly as an only child. And so I was raised around a lot of adults. So I never like related to my age group because I was always around people who were older than me. And so I was at least listening, even though I wasn't partaking in the conversations, I was observing and listening to conversations that were far above my age understanding. Um, so then I was raised Christian, but went to a Catholic high school, which yes, all Catholics are Christian, but not all Christians are Catholic. And so then I would sit there and like we had to take a mandatory religion class, and I'd be like, "But I have a question," and the teacher was like how basically how dare you ask that question? Like that just is what it is. I'm like, but that does not compute in my brain because if we're told this, then that doesn't make sense. And not even in question of the like religion itself, but just like in the doctrinal subservience. I'm like, that doesn't make sense in my brain. I've never been that child. I would ask my mom questions constantly and I would get an age appropriate answer. There was always an answer. It was never just because. We talked about that with your kids,
Yeah.
but like there was always an age appropriate answer. If I asked about sex, I was given an age appropriate answer about what sex was. It wasn't graphic, it wasn't negative or like negatively impactful. She wanted me to understand, and I understood because she gave me, and it also gave me the freedom to feel like I could live with some curiosity, to live. And like to me, that's the childlike wonder we talked about, right? Like we lose that as we get older because it's beaten out of us or schooled out of us as we write and check boxes and do the thing.
Exactly. Yes, and somebody did a study, I can't remember his name right now, but he did a study on kindergartners, and they all score, like, 98 point something of them score as brilliant
Mm,
and as genius level, and then every year, that percentage goes down because it's beaten out of us. It's not that you can't get back to that brilliance, it's the
yeah.
fact that we're told you are there's a great episode on here, his name's Braxton Wood, and he talks about this idea of it's beaten out of us because we were made to make cogs. Everybody is
Yes.
in this industrial revolution space still, when we're in the information space, and the studies and the schools have not caught up to that yet. And so
Well,
now
I
we're
don't
like,
know caught up. I think that it's designed to keep us small.
"Oh, 100%." And so
Like, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll always think that it's stupid or whatever the saying
yeah.
is, right? And most of us don't fit into this learning capacity that school teaches us. We're not meant to sit there in a classroom and intake information. We're like born to experience, and we learn better through the experiencing of it, not memorization and box ticking. But anyway, proceed.
But yeah, and, like, my oldest, who's 11, her I was at her teacher conference last year, and this was at a previous school, and the teachers looked at me because there was 3 of them, and they said, "Well, how can we help her when she fails and she gets upset?" And I was like, "Well, I know that this is not how y'all function, but to tell her that failure is part of this and that it's okay to fail and that it's not gonna be the end of the world," and they just looked at me like I had grown 3 heads. I
Yeah,
was like, failing happens. We're not always gonna get it right the first time, and
inevitable. Every
the
single one
more
of
that you
us.
know that, and the more that you're able to fail forward over and over and over again and not look at it as failing, but look at it as, "Okay, I'm just gonna try again," then that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. Ooh, teaching kids to well, adults. We're all little children in these adult meat suits, right? But, like, if we can teach all of our inner children and the actual young children that, like, to welcome failure. It sounds backwards, but welcome it because you learn I mean, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. You learn more in your setback than you do in your triumph.
Mhm.
And that failure teaches you, okay, this did not work. It also teaches you you can try again. It also teaches you that
Yeah.
you can try again. But we get into this world where if you fail a test, you don't pass the class. And so now it's all finite and it's all ending, all based on this one exam where it's like, no, you failed it, but like, what didn't you learn? What did you learn from that failure? And
And maybe
applying
this
that to
is
now the
not
next.
your life path. Maybe math is not your thing. Maybe I always tell
No,
people, like, there's other ways. We have calculators, we have spell check. If you're
we
not the
don't need
best at
more
that one thing,
engineers.
and
We
so it's
need
like,
more artists, dreamers, doers, tradesmen.
yeah. Well, and I think that there's so many more things that we can talk about on this. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I think we're gonna split this into 2," is all of these different things that we're talking about, and you're like, "Oh my god, Wes and Kabrina need to talk more about failure. They need to talk more about this specific thing." We can go do a little bit of research, do some etymology for you, and be like, "Okay, well, what does this mean?" And
Yes.
bring it and have this conversation again because I think there's so many things here, as well as how do we find a way for us to connect with you to now support you on this path as you've kind of learned this life path through this whole conversation so that we can get places please in front of people and doing what it needs to be. We'd talked before we started recording about all the things you're going to do with Delulu Crew. So I'd love for you to take a minute and share with us, one, how people can connect with you, where they can find you, obviously the Tiki Talkies. So give us your exact username, and then these will all be
Yes.
in the show notes for you. But then also, how do we support you to get to these next steps in where you want to go?
I love that, and I appreciate all of the support and future guidance and help throughout this next chapter that I'm navigating. I feel very I've said before that the climb to the top can be very lonely, and I feel like yes, I there's some alienation along the way as I do parts of this that I can only do. No one else can do them for me, but I feel very supported and very uplifted, and I definitely don't feel alone in the fact that there are so many across all social medias like people that have rallied on I have one post that I posted on Instagram and TikTok in particular that has gotten some traction about Places Please, and the eyes on it have been absolutely incredible. But the feedback on it, I have gotten one negative comment, literally one singular comment by a man who said that I'm a union equity worker. Equity is the union for Broadway and musical theater, and this show couldn't interest me less. And I was like, That's really interesting because you're the only person out of these 7,000 comments that feels that way. And that's where you are because you were probably wounded by this industry. So you don't want to see what that looks like. And that's okay. But imagine sitting here and tearing down somebody else's dream because you're unhappy. That makes me sad for you. And that was literally my response. Like, it's a sad existence to feel like you have to sit here because all I did in that video was talk about what I was trying to achieve in my hopes and dreams and delusions of this thing. And you felt the need to come on here instead of just scrolling by. You felt the need to sit here and comment on why you don't want this, which is so wild. But anyway, all of that to say, I can be found on social media across all platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, although I don't really post on there very much, but nonetheless, at Wesley Ryan, WesleyRyann. The double N is important. It's not how you spell my name, but Wesley with one N or Ryan with one N was taken. Wesley Ryan, two N's. Try to post pretty consistently on both platforms. We're also on Instagram at Places Please TV. We'll be posting updates on the show there. As things tend to snowball and avalanche as they go, we'll be posting audition notices there. If you are a theater performer, actor, musician, whatever, we're going to need everything for this production company for this TV show. So keep an eye out there. We'll be posting anything that we need for the show. For the Delulu crew, those of you that want to join the revolution and, wow, another Hamilton reference, and be a part of this community of dreamers, lovers, builders. If you have ideas of your own that you want to see brought to life, please join us. What's one of the things that I want this production company to do is to help people who don't necessarily have access to a studio or to cameramen or to a pod. Like, I want to build this space where you can make your wildest dreams come true, because that's what I am building brick by brick, using the network of people that we have. And I would love to extend that network to anybody who wants to be a part of this. It's 111 as I say that. We are going to be dropping some Delulu Crew merch as a first initial drop. It'll be a pre-order situation so we can get numbers and sizes. I will be posting about those probably about the time that this episode comes out. I'll have that up and running, which would be perfect. It'll be most likely on my social media, so probably in TikTok shop also, but through my website, which is rwayoriginal.com, the letter R, W-A-Y, original.com. There'll be a tab to the shop there where you can see, and we'll have the pre-orders up and running. And all of the proceeds from this first initial drop of Delulu Crew merch will go towards Places Please and mostly pre-production, because I want to be able to pay the people that are helping. It's one thing for me to work for free as I build this delusion into reality, but I want to be able to pay the people along the way and compensate them fairly for their work. That is one of the things that I want to change about the industry also. So that things cost money. Social media managers cost money. Directors cost money. Rentals for spaces for production cost money. Everything costs money. And building a TV show is expensive. And I want to be able to do this. I've been saying a lot, if it's not going to be done in a way that accurately reflects the world and brings about the change that I want to, then I'd rather not be done. We have a lot of behind the scenes TV show and things that are made by people who have never lived it and been on the ground doing it. They're telling a story that they think they understand, which then you lose I've said before, this is not a TV show for people in the industry, but I want us to feel reflected by this thing. And if it doesn't accurately reflect our lives, then you're not going to relate to it. And again, in an era of transparency and honesty, I want it to look as identical to the world as possible. We're blurring the lines between fiction and reality in this. So all of the proceeds from Lulu Crew merch will go towards funding this TV show so we can get that up and running and get production kickstarted so that this can really, I firmly believe that it's going to take the world by storm, and not just because it's mine, but because of the already given feedback and relation to it on just posts that I've shared. The number of people that have been like, I can't wait to be a part of this. I can't wait to watch this on my TV. I did theater in high school and I never pursued it as a career. So to see what that looks like, I ask people in a lot of my videos, leave a comment about what you would want to know about the industry that we can answer in this TV show. Because I want anybody, I feel like there's a disconnect between audience and artist, whether that be pop star, TV celebrity, musical theater star. People buy tickets to the show, and now the expectation is that you're servicing me for this service that I've paid for. When you've paid for an experience that we are giving you, that we have poured our entire lives into. I've been doing this for 30 years. This is not like the reason why your ticket costs so much is not even because of how much the actors are getting paid, but because of what it costs to walk in the door for union rules to be union not applicable. What's the word? While on tour, we had to cancel a show because of an ice storm that hit Texas. And we had people whose cars froze to their driveway and they could not get to work. We were still dealing with the aftermath of COVID in 2021 as well. And the negative feedback that we got on our personal Instagrams, well, we were willing to drive in from wherever. Like, why? Like, I can't believe that you wouldn't show up. And like, it's not my job to risk my life for a performance of Hamilton. I understand the disappointment of wanting to go see something that people waited years for, especially within a pandemic. They had tickets to see the show in that year and they didn't get to, and we were getting back to it. But we didn't do this to you. This did not happen to you. Yes, and you're going to make it, they'll make up the show somewhere. I promise you, you'll still see it. But you forget that there are people that have needs. Every day, people were testing positive for COVID. It was fear backstage. We were every day having to test when someone new that was on stage the night before tested positive because now we're close contact. So we were losing people left and right that then by the time we had this ice storm happen, it wasn't that we didn't want to be at work. There was things going on, or you see like Brandy at the Brandy and Monica show. She almost passed out because she was so dehydrated. And people were like, how dare she leave the stage? I paid for this ticket. Her human worth is worth less than the ticket that you paid. That's crazy to me. And I want to show people the human cost and sacrifice that goes into the art that we consume. And we all consume art on a daily basis, whether we're listening to music, whether we're watching TV, whether we're listening to a podcast, whatever it is, where you're going to see a show, we all consume this art and forget that it's a human being behind that art. And not even just the one on stage. There are the collaborators of human beings that keep that tour, Taylor Swift's tour. There are 100 people that run that stuff that never step on stage, whose
Yeah,
lives we
that we
have to
never
take
know.
that we never see. And that's one of the things that I want to show about this show. It's not just about the performers of this industry. It is about wardrobe and lighting and sound and company managers and stage managers and the musicians and the local crew in each city. All of them that bring this Broadway magic to stages across the country, across the globe, who never get any recognition because they're not the ones who are front facing. We look at the spotlight and think that that's all that it is. And there's so much more to it. We are just the mouthpiece for it, right? And there's something to be said for that. Like, that is a weighted cog to play in this machine, but it does not work with just us. If the lights are off, we don't shine, pun intended, you know? And so I really want to bring some humanity awareness back into our expectation of art and artists through this whole process. And I want to utilize as many voices and experiences as I can in this so that it is as relatable to the masses as possible. I think putting open heart, and I come from a faith background, so I am firmly I believe that God is love. So anywhere we pour love, we pour God. No matter what you think God is or what you call it, that's not from a religious standpoint. That is just from we are beings meant to love, and we've lost a lot of that. And I think if we can put love back on screens through a honest lens of what it takes to like become that loving soul, that doesn't come from triumph, that comes from hurt. There's the saying, hurt people hurt people. That's very true, but hurt people also heal people, because there are the hurt people that go, wow, I have been hurt, or life has hurt me, or I've experienced this hurt, and I never want anyone else to feel that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do my best to change it. And that's why I call myself a bridge person, because like it is that lived experience that is going to bring so many others to what I hope is alignment and healing through watching this TV show, whether they realize it or not. Watching all of these characters fail and win and fail and win and learn and love, showing us that it's possible, what's possible and how it's possible. I think that on screens across the globe is going to, I pray, raise the collective healing and awareness that is already snowballing, right? I just want to be part of that avalanche that reaches as many people as possible. And it has been on my spirit since we started writing this. It was the first time in my life, call it delusion, chief delusionary at your service. But when we started writing this, it was the first time in my life where I was like, there's no way that this doesn't happen. I've never in my life felt so assuredly of something in my life. I was like, I don't know how. As Ariel says, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I know something is starting right now. And I'm going to be a part of that world by building my little subsection, my little Delulu crew, that I pray that we are the global majority by the end of this,
I love
the
that.
delusionaries and lovers and believers and doers and healers of this world all gathering together to just like make this world a better place.
Yeah,
One interpersonal relationship at a time, you
I
know?
love that. I love
That's
all
my
of these things.
and
Yes, I love it, and I'm so glad that you got to go on your soapbox there for a second about all these things, 'cause I think that that closes us out so nicely for this episode because there's so many cool things that we've talked about and we've touched on throughout this whole entire ordeal. And there is so much of this that you talk about on TikTok and on your social media that if you're listening, I highly encourage you to go find Wes, go look at all the things that are happening and follow the content, follow along, support, comment, share, do all of those things because this is something that is going to touch a lot of people. And being early in this process, you get to be a part of that. So there's one more
I
question
like
that
to
we
say
asked.
I like to say
Yes.
getting in on the ground level of greatness is my
Yes.
this is
I
what
love
started
that.
it, and that's greatness for all of us. Also, I've started life and career kind of coaching of with the delusional mentality. So if you ever wanna work with me, my DMs are always open. I respond to everything. So please reach out. I'm more than happy to work with and help and aid in whatever I can along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And so we ask one question to everybody who's a guest on the podcast, and that is if you had a warning label, what would yours be?
If I had a warning label, what would mine be? I would say my warning label is in the mentality of being a fixer. I may not always give you what you want to hear, but it'll be what you need to hear. And I am a collaborator. It's worked in my detriment because if people don't want the help, then the effort of help is going to be met with some resistance. So my warning label is that I am always going to push you to be the best version of yourself
I love that.
even if it doesn't feel like it is what you want or need in that moment. My best friend and I had to have we've known each other for going on 20 years now, and she lived with my mom and I for a while. And when you live in that close proximity with somebody who isn't your sibling, you have to learn a lot about a person that you didn't grow up with. We met when we were about 16. Um, and we at 17, 18 were working through sometimes like, do you want sympathy or solutions? And asking that question because sometimes she would complain to me about something, and my initial response as a fixer is to give you solutions to the problem. But she wanted to be heard. And so if she didn't feel heard in my response, then she's not getting what she needed. But there's a way that both can occur. I hear you. That I can only imagine like what that would feel like to be in that situation. Do you want sympathy or solutions? And sometimes she would say solutions. I'm like, great, we got this. And now I've got 18 things I can try. And sometimes she's like, I just want the sympathy. I'm like, I'm here to listen. Tell me what you need. I'm here to help. I'm here to love. I'm here to pour. And you can't pour from an empty cup. So find things that into your cup so that you can better pour into others. It is not a positive to be pouring out yourself to others because then you're gonna run on empty and burn yourself out way sooner than you need to, than you're capable of. Like I don't know how to like finish that, but I I'm all for filling cups, including my own. The last 2.5 years of my life have been the cup filling years and been like, oh, what do I need? And
Yeah.
asking, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I call this the SOS. So that sympathy or solutions, because
Mm,
that's one of the things that when you ask for help, when you open your mouth and you're saying something to somebody else, we're putting out a physical SOS for ourselves. And then we have to decide which one of those S's do we want? Do we
yes.
want sympathy or the solution? So I'm so glad that you brought that up. But again, if you're like, "Oh my gosh, they touched on this one thing, but they only said one sentence about it," because there was plenty of those that we didn't get to have the chance to go into because we could
Yes.
do this for hours.
I could sit here all day and talk to you.
I love that. I love it. And this is how you make your best friends. So go comment on
Yes.
people's stuff on the internet and be like, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you," because you never know what's gonna happen. Definitely on Spotify, you can put into the comments, "Hey, I'd love for you to talk about this." If you reach out to either of us, we will keep each other updated, but that's the best place to be like, "Hey, let's do this again." And
Yes.
I'm sure that we will have more to talk about as we get to know each other better because we've got tons of invisible strings that we need to chat through
And
anyways.
the more that we're gonna learn along the way, I can't wait.
Yes.
I can't wait.
So exciting. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to Top Shelf Creator, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Top Shelf Creator podcast. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Top Shelf Creator. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we would love to see you share it with a friend and give us a review wherever you listen to help us reach more creators and entrepreneurs just like you.